Hello there, and welcome to Life, where curiosity drifts slow and steady, and science is less about sharp edges and more about the gentle hum that helps you rest. Tonight we're not looking up at the stars or counting the hours on a clock. Tonight we're going down. Not just under the waves you see at the shore, not just past the light-filled shallows, but far deeper, into a place where daylight has never reached, where pressure would crush metal, and where life has taken on forms so vast and strange they almost seem like myths that swam out of human imagination. But they're real, and they are still down there, hidden in the vast abyss. Our quiet voyage is all about the giants that still rule the deep. When I say giants, you probably think of whales or sharks, and yes, they are enormous, but the deep sea has its own champions, beasts with eyes the size of dinner plates, crustaceans stretched longer than a grown person is tall, creatures with bodies built for a world we will never walk in, yet they rule it as calmly as we stroll through a park. Some of them we've only seen a handful of times, caught on cameras that creak under the weight of all that water. Some of them we know mostly from the scars they leave on others, and some are so mysterious that we can only guess how large they might grow, waiting for one to drift into the reach of our lights. But before we sink into the dark, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? And what time of day is it for you as we wander through a world where time itself almost loses its meaning? In the deep sea there are no clocks, no sunrise or sunset, no seasons that can be felt, only a constant night. And here we are together, sharing this strange moment, you in your space, me here with these words, and out there, miles below, giants waiting unseen. If you find this journey calming, if the sound of these stories helps you slow down, or if it simply sparks a gentle wonder before you drift asleep, I'd be so grateful if you gave this video a like and maybe subscribed. It helps this little corner of curiosity find others who might need the same quiet company you found. But don't worry, I won't linger on it. That's just a small request before we begin to lower ourselves into the cold black water. Because once we pass the sunlit surface and leave behind the last flicker of colour, the ocean becomes something else entirely. A world of giants, but not giants in the way you expect. Giants that stretch arms instead of legs. Giants that move in silence instead of roars. Giants that carry their own lights, flickering in the dark like floating cities. Down here, size takes on new meaning. In a place where food is scarce and survival is a daily gamble, some creatures grow to sizes that defy the rules we thought nature followed. It's the paradox of the deep, a place of scarcity that somehow still creates the colossal. As we drift deeper, imagine the layers slipping past. At first, the surface swells, blue and lively with fish you'd recognize. Then the twilight zone, where light fades to dim silver and colors blur. Deeper still, into the midnight zone, where the sun's reach has ended forever. Beyond that, trenches and plains where the pressure rises to hundreds of times what your body could bear, where the cold sinks close to freezing, and where life should by all rights give up. Yet it doesn't. Instead, it flourishes in forms that seem sculpted from dreams and nightmares, and among them are the rulers, the giants, the beings that make us realize how small we are, not because of their size alone, but because of how little we truly know. The first of these rulers we'll meet is one you may already know by name but not by nature. It hunts where no sunlight shines, using sound instead of sight. It's a giant, but it breathes air like we do, and yet it spends most of its life in a realm we can barely touch. This is the sperm whale, the largest predator that has ever lived, larger even than any dinosaur that ever hunted on land. But let's not rush there just yet. Part of the wonder of this kind of journey is the descent itself. You see, the deep sea doesn't reveal itself all at once. You don't simply drop into the black and immediately find a squid longer than a bus waiting for you. No, the descent takes time. Time for the light to fade. Time for the silence to settle in. Time for your senses to adjust to the thought that you're going into a place where human bodies were never meant to survive. And in that gradual slide downward, you begin to feel the scale of what we're about to encounter. Even the water itself changes. At the surface it is warm, stirred by sunlight and currents. A little lower it begins to chill, go deeper still, and it becomes a world of cold so intense it feels endless. This temperature drop, this narrowing of conditions shapes the giants below. They live in stability, a constant darkness, a constant cold, a constant pressure. No seasons, no day or night, just the same environment stretching out for thousands of years. Imagine growing in such a place. You might grow slowly, but with nothing to disturb you, you might also grow endlessly. And that is one of the secrets of deep-sea giants. Down here, many creatures grow larger simply because they can. There are no human nets sweeping these depths in the same way they sweep the surface. There are fewer predators to cut lives short, and with longer lives, bodies have more time to grow. This phenomenon even has a name. Scientists call it deep-sea gigantism. It's why you'll find isopods the size of puppies, amphipods bigger than your hand, and squid that could wrap their arms around a small ship. It's a reminder that nature doesn't follow our sense of scale. It follows its own rules, and sometimes those rules lead to giants. But tonight, as we explore, we'll focus on the ones that truly rule this world. The heavyweights of the abyss. The ones that still leave scientists astonished when glimpsed on grainy footage or washed up on lonely shores. The ones that prove we haven't even scratched the surface of understanding our own planet. The ocean covers more than 2/3 of Earth, and yet we've mapped more of Mars than we have of the deep sea, which means that out there, right now, miles below your feet, there may be creatures larger than any we've seen, living lives we've never imagined, and ruling a world we can barely reach. So, settle in. Let your breathing match the slow rhythm of descent. Picture the last traces of sunlight fading, the water turning darker, the pressure closing in, and let's meet the giants who still rule the deep. When most people think of giants in the ocean, their minds jump to whales, and they're not wrong. But in the deep sea, one species stands apart. It's not only one of the largest animals on Earth, it's the largest predator that has ever existed. Bigger than any Tyrannosaurus rex, bigger even than the marine reptiles that once ruled prehistoric seas. This is the sperm whale, a creature that can dive to depths where light has never been, holding its breath for over an hour at a time, and hunting prey so massive it's almost hard to believe. The sperm whale has been the subject of legends, literature, and endless speculation. People once feared it, imagining it as a monster capable of sinking ships. Herman Melville turned it into Moby Dick, a white phantom haunting sailors. The truth is both stranger and more fascinating than any story we could make up. Because this giant, while it breathes the same air we do, spends much of its life in a part of the world we can barely glimpse. The abyss. Picture a sperm whale in your mind. Its head makes up 1/3 of its body length. That's not an exaggeration. These whales can grow over 60 feet long, sometimes more, and nearly 20 feet of that is head. Inside that massive head is a chamber filled with a waxy substance called spermaceti, once hunted by humans to be used in lamps, lubricants, and even cosmetics. For centuries, no one quite knew what purpose it served for the whale. Some thought it gave the animal buoyancy, helping it sink or rise. Others suggested it was a shock absorber, cushioning that enormous head as the whale rammed prey or rivals. Today, most scientists believe the spermaceti organ is part of the whale's sonar system, an acoustic tool so powerful it borders on the unbelievable. Sperm whales navigate and hunt using echolocation. They send out clicks that travel through the water, bouncing off objects and returning as echoes. But these aren't just ordinary clicks. They're the loudest biological sounds on Earth. Louder than jet engines, louder than rock concerts. A sperm whale's click can reach over 230 decibels. For comparison, a shotgun blast is about 150. These sounds are so powerful that some researchers believe they can stun or disorient prey. Imagine living in darkness so complete you can't see your hand in front of your face. In that world, sound becomes vision. For the sperm whale, the clicks create a 3-dimensional map of everything around it, from the faintest fish to the largest squid. It doesn't just hear the world, it sees with sound. And what prey could demand such a system? The answer lies in one of the most elusive animals known, the giant squid. Sperm whales are among the very few predators large enough, strong enough, and determined enough to pursue them into the depths. While we rarely witness the battles between whale and squid, the evidence is carved into the whales themselves. Many sperm whales have long scars, circular marks left by the suckers and hooks of squid. Sometimes these scars are the size of dinner plates, proof that the squid were not only enormous but also fought back. It's a duel between titans, hidden in black water far below where sunlight dies. And though the squid are rarely seen alive, sperm whales bring back the proof in their stomachs. Giant squid beaks, indigestible and unyielding, often pile up inside them, silent records of hunts carried out in a realm humans can barely enter. To reach such prey, sperm whales dive deeper than almost any other mammal. While most whales spend their lives near the surface, these giants plunge thousands of feet down. Typical dives last about 45 minutes, but some recorded dives have stretched past 90. At depths of over 3,000 feet, the pressure is unimaginable. Every square inch of the whale's body feels the weight of hundreds of atmospheres. If a human diver were to descend that far without protection, their lungs would collapse, their body crushed in seconds. But the sperm whale has evolved to endure it. Its ribcage can flex inward, its lungs collapse safely to avoid damage, and its blood carries enormous amounts of oxygen. Hemoglobin in its blood and myoglobin in its muscles store oxygen reserves, allowing it to keep swimming, keep hunting, even while holding its breath for what would be a lifetime for us. And when it finally rises back toward the surface, it does so in stages, resting as it descends to avoid problems with gases dissolving in its blood. Divers call it decompression sickness, or the bends. For the whale, the risk is real too, and studies suggest they may pause during their ascent to let their bodies adjust. Even giants have to be careful. What fascinates scientists almost as much as their biology is their culture. Because sperm whales don't just hunt and dive, they communicate. Those same clicks they use for echolocation can also form codas, patterns of sound shared between individuals. These codas seem to vary between groups, like dialects in human language. A whale born in one group may have a slightly different set of calls than a whale born in another. These variations aren't random. They're passed down, taught and shared, suggesting that sperm whales like us live in cultures. Families of whales called pods stay together, led often by older females. They raise calves collectively, protect one another, and share hunting grounds. Males may roam farther, but females and young stay bonded, forming societies that stretch across the oceans. That bond may even extend to memory. Sperm whales live for decades, perhaps more than 70 years. Some may remember encounters from long ago, including with humans. During the height of the whaling era, they were hunted relentlessly for their oil, spermaceti and ambergris, a substance produced in their intestines that was once prized in perfumes. Ships armed with harpoons pursued them across the globe. Entire populations were decimated, yet they survived. And in the last century, with protections in place, their numbers have begun to recover, though not to what they once were. Even now, we're not certain how many roam the seas. They spend so much of their lives deep underwater that accurate counts are hard to make. But we know they're still out there, still diving, still hunting, still ruling the dark with thunderous sound. Ambergris itself is a reminder of just how strange these animals are. It forms when indigestible squid parts, like beaks, irritate the whale's intestines. Instead of passing through, the material becomes coated with waxy secretions, forming a lump that may eventually be expelled. When it washes ashore, ambergris can look like a dull grey stone. But once refined, it carries a musky scent that perfumers once called liquid gold. Whole economies once relied on it, all because a whale ate a squid. To study sperm whales is to face limits. We can tag them with instruments that record their dives, their sounds, their movements. We can follow them in ships, listen with underwater microphones, even fly drones above them. But we can't easily follow them to where they spend most of their time. They vanish into the deep, into a world we still can't reach for long. And so much of their life remains a mystery. Do they sleep as we do? How do they decide where to hunt? How do they navigate the endless black plains of the ocean floor? Some evidence suggests they may rest vertically, hanging in the water in groups, drifting in silence. Imagine coming across that. A wall of whales standing still in the water, like silent statues in a cathedral of black. In recent years, scientists have tried to decode their clicks, to see if meaning lies within the coders. Could it be that whales share information in ways we barely grasp? Could their societies be more complex than we ever dared to believe? We know their brains are the largest of any animal on Earth. A sperm whale's brain can weigh over 17 pounds. That doesn't automatically mean intelligence as we measure it, but it does suggest a capacity for complex thought, for memory, for communication. And when you combine that with their long lives and social bonds, it's hard not to imagine that their world, hidden from us, is richer than we've realised. When sailors first saw them, they called them monsters, but the more we learn, the more we see them for what they are. Survivors of centuries of human exploitation, hunters of prey that most of us will never see, engineers of sound navigating with thunderous clicks, giants of the abyss reigning not with speed or claws or teeth alone, but with patience, endurance, and the ability to thrive in a world where we cannot go. And yet, the sperm whale is not alone in its kingdom. As we leave its massive shape behind, there are other giants waiting in the dark. Giants without bones, giants with arms that stretch longer than buses, giants that leave scars on the very skin of whales. The deep holds not one ruler, but many. And the next we meet is the phantom of the black water, a creature so elusive that for centuries it was considered a myth. In the vast darkness of the ocean, there is one creature that has haunted human imagination more than any other. Sailors spoke of it in whispers, explorers feared it, and for centuries no one could quite prove it was real. The giant squid has been called a sea monster, a kraken, a phantom that drags ships under with its endless arms. The truth, as it turns out, is not far from the myth. Because the giant squid is real, it is still out there, and it remains one of the most mysterious giants of the deep. The giant squid belongs to a group of animals called cephalopods, relatives of octopuses and cuttlefish. But while most cephalopods are small, quick and clever, the giant squid takes everything to another scale. Its body can stretch more than 40 feet from the tip of its mantle to the end of its two long feeding tentacles. Some unconfirmed reports suggest they can grow even larger, perhaps over 50 or 60 feet, but since they live in a world we rarely see, we still don't know their true limits. What we do know is that they are among the largest invertebrates on Earth, rivaled only by their close cousin, the colossal squid. Imagine drifting in the pitch-black water 2 miles down, and suddenly, in the dim beam of a submersible's light, you see it. A long, torpedo-shaped body, with huge fins at one end beating slowly to propel it. Arms and tentacles spread outward like a living net. Eyes the size of dinner plates staring back at you. For many centuries, no one on land had ever seen this sight. Giant squids do not surface. They do not bask in the sun like whales, nor do they wash ashore alive. They live in the twilight and midnight zones of the ocean, in depths so remote that even our most advanced technology struggles to find them. For most of history, the only evidence we had of their existence were the remains that washed up on beaches, or were hauled up accidentally in nets. And even then, the specimens were damaged, their bodies soft and fragile, leaving people to wonder if the stories were exaggerated. It wasn't until the 21st century that scientists finally managed to capture video of a living giant squid in its natural habitat. In 2004, Japanese researchers obtained the first photographs, and in 2012 they filmed one alive in the deep. That moment, grainy and otherworldly, was like watching a legend step into reality. The creature glided silently, its long tentacles moving with a grace that belied its size. For the first time, humanity could confirm what had only been rumour and scar before. Part of what makes the giant squid so fascinating is its biology. Those massive eyes are among the largest in the animal kingdom. Each one can be over 10 inches across. Why so big? In the deep sea, light is scarce. But even a little glow, such as the faint shimmer of bioluminescent creatures disturbed by movement, can reveal the approach of a predator. Scientists believe the squid's enormous eyes help it detect faint light at great distances, allowing it to spot the looming shadow of its greatest enemy, the sperm whale. A single glance may give it just enough warning to twist its body, release a cloud of ink, and flee. Down there, survival depends on fractions of a second. And then there are the arms. Like other squid, it has 8 shorter arms, each lined with suction cups. But the 2 feeding tentacles are different. They can stretch far longer, ending in powerful clubs covered with suckers and sometimes sharp hooks. These tentacles shoot out to capture prey, pulling fish or smaller squid into the grasp of the shorter arms, which then maneuver the catch toward the beak. The beak of a giant squid is no small thing. It is sharp, strong, and capable of slicing through flesh with ease. Even though the squid has no bones, no skeleton, this beak gives it the ability to tear apart prey that would otherwise be too large to swallow. And prey there must be. A creature of this size requires a tremendous amount of energy. They are thought to hunt fish, other squid, and perhaps anything they can catch in the blackness. But we know surprisingly little about their diet because sightings are so rare. What we do know, again, comes largely from the stomachs of sperm whales. Inside, researchers have found countless squid beaks, many from giant squid. In fact, some sperm whales appear to specialise in hunting them, diving to incredible depths to seek out these elusive phantoms, and the scars on whale skin suggest the squid do not go quietly. The idea of whales and squid locked in battle has captured imaginations for centuries. Sailors returning from long voyages told stories of tentacles wrapping around whales, pulling them under in a struggle so violent that the sea boiled with foam. The truth is probably less dramatic, but no less astonishing. The whale uses sound to track the squid, closing in with powerful sonar clicks, while the squid lashes back with arms and hooks. Even if the whale usually wins, the squid fights fiercely, leaving its marks behind. In that sense, every scar on a whale's face is a record of a battle deep in the abyss. But perhaps the greatest mystery of all is how little we truly know about these creatures. Their life cycle, their breeding habits, their migrations. Most of it remains hidden. Do they live solitary lives, wandering alone through the darkness? Or do they gather in groups somewhere beyond our reach? How long do they live? How fast do they grow? These are questions without firm answers. A few larval forms have been collected near the surface, tiny and delicate compared to the monsters they will become. Beyond that, we are left with speculation. What we do know is that they are soft-bodied and fragile. Despite their size, they are not armoured giants. Their bodies are made mostly of water, with little protection beyond speed and stealth. A giant squid cannot survive being dragged to the surface by nets. The change in pressure and temperature is fatal. That is why so many specimens wash ashore in poor condition, their bodies bloated and broken. It is one reason why our understanding of them remains so limited. To study them alive, we must go where they live, and that is something we're only just beginning to achieve. It's worth pausing to consider how much of their mystery is preserved by the ocean itself. The deep sea is not just another environment, it is a barrier. Pressure, darkness, and distance shield its inhabitants from us. A whale may surface and breathe, a shark may swim near coasts, but the giant squid almost never enters our world. It remains locked in its own. Every rare glimpse reminds us of how incomplete our knowledge is. For all our satellites and technology, for all the maps of Mars and images from distant galaxies, there are still giants here on Earth that we barely know. Some of the earliest myths of sea monsters probably began with the giant squid. The Norse spoke of the kraken, a creature so huge it could wrap itself around ships and drag them to the bottom. Medieval sailors feared tentacles rising from the water without warning. Even in the 19th century, naturalists debated whether such a creature could exist, and when carcasses did wash ashore, they were often dismissed as exaggerations or misidentified as other animals. It took science a long time to accept what folklore had already suggested, that in the deep ocean, monsters are real, and the giant squid is not just a monster, it is an apex phantom. Not the top predator, since whales can bring it down, but a predator nonetheless. It hunts with stealth and speed, using tentacles as weapons, eyes as searchlights, and a brain surprisingly complex for an invertebrate. Cephalopods are known for their intelligence. Octopuses solve puzzles, escape tanks, and use tools. Squid too have large nervous systems. We don't yet know how intelligent the giant squid may be, but the size of its brain compared to its body is greater than many animals. In the deep, where light is gone and sound carries forever, intelligence may take on forms we have not yet recognized. The first time scientists saw a living giant squid on film, they described the moment as humbling. After centuries of searching, there it was, moving not like a beast of chaos, but like a creature perfectly at home in its world. It was not attacking ships or lashing wildly. It was simply gliding, arms trailing, eyes scanning, doing what it has likely done for millions of years, surviving, hidden, vast, and indifferent to our presence. It's possible that even larger species exist waiting to be discovered. The ocean is full of hints, Fishermen sometimes report tentacles longer than anything known. Carcasses found ashore sometimes suggest lengths beyond the largest confirmed specimens. And in the silence of the trenches, who knows what size a cephalopod might reach? Until we can truly explore those depths, the possibility remains. For now, the giant squid rules not by numbers, not by dominance, but by mystery. It is a giant that still escapes us, a reminder that some secrets are not easily given up. Every time a submersible descends, every time a camera drifts in the dark, there is the chance of another encounter. And every encounter deepens the sense that the ocean is far stranger than we imagine. And as elusive as the giant squid is, it has a cousin even more formidable. Thicker, heavier, with eyes even larger, and arms armed with swiveling hooks instead of suckers alone. While the giant squid is a phantom, its cousin is a brute. To find it, we must travel south, into the cold waters near Antarctica, where the colossal squid waits in the dark. In the cold waters of the Southern Ocean, where the sun barely rises above the horizon in winter and icebergs drift like mountains, there lives a creature even more formidable than the giant squid. If the giant squid is the phantom of the abyss, then the colossal squid is its shadow, heavier, stronger, and in some ways even stranger. For years, many people assumed the giant squid was the ultimate cephalopod, the final word in size and mystery. Then evidence began to emerge of something even larger, and it quickly became clear that our understanding had only just begun. The colossal squid is sometimes confused with its giant cousin, but it is not the same. Where the giant squid grows long and slender, with arms trailing like ribbons through the water, the colossal squid is built differently. Its body is thicker, more compact, almost stocky by comparison. Its mantle alone can be more than twice as heavy as that of a giant squid of the same length. In fact, the colossal squid holds the record as the heaviest invertebrate known to science. Estimates suggest fully grown adults can weigh over 1,000 pounds, with some possibly reaching 1/500. That's heavier than a polar bear, heavier than a cow, heavier than nearly any other animal without a backbone. And then there are the arms. Like its cousin, the colossal squid has 8 arms and 2 longer tentacles, but here the similarities end. Instead of just rows of suction cups, the colossal squid's limbs are lined with rotating hooks. Some are sharp and swiveling, designed to dig in and tear. Imagine the difference between grabbing something with sticky pads versus grabbing it with grappling hooks. When this creature lashes out, it doesn't just cling, it cuts. The thought of it lurking in black water, arms bristling with hooks, is enough to explain why even the sperm whale, its greatest predator, emerges from battle scarred and battered. Its eyes are another marvel. If the giant squid's eyes are large, the colossal squids are enormous. Each one can measure over 1 foot across, the largest eyes of any animal alive today. Think about that. Bigger than the eyes of an elephant, bigger even than the eyes of the great whales that dwarf it in length. These eyes are so big that they are almost hard to imagine fitting into a living creature. Why would an animal need eyes that size? Scientists believe it's to detect faint light at extreme depths. In particular, the glow of bioluminescent organisms stirred up by the approach of a predator like a whale. With such sensitive vision, the colossal squid may be able to sense danger long before it arrives, buying precious moments to flee into the darkness. Despite its terrifying equipment, the colossal squid is not a monster in the way stories once claimed. It is a predator, yes, but like all predators, it hunts to survive. Evidence suggests that it feeds on large fish, including the Patagonian toothfish, a species that itself can grow over 6 feet long. Some commercial fisheries in Antarctic waters have hauled up colossal squid that were hooked after attacking these fish on the lines. That's how some of the first intact specimens came to light. But those encounters are rare, and for the most part this animal remains hidden far below the surface, in waters too deep and too cold for us to visit easily. One of the most famous discoveries occurred in 2007, when a New Zealand fishing vessel accidentally caught a colossal squid in the Ross Sea. The animal was immense, weighing nearly half a ton, with eyes the size of dinner plates and arms bristling with hooks. Preserved and studied, it gave scientists one of the first real opportunities to examine this giant up close. Yet even then, questions outnumbered answers. Was this a fully grown specimen, or could they grow larger still? How often do they encounter whales? How long do they live? For each piece of evidence gathered, the mystery only deepened. Part of the fascination with the colossal squid is that it challenges our sense of scale. We're used to thinking of invertebrates as small bugs, crabs, jellyfish, things you can hold in your hand. To imagine one weighing as much as a car is to realise how little we know about the deep. The phenomenon of deep-sea gigantism plays a role here, just as it does with other abyssal creatures. In the cold, dark waters of the Antarctic, growth is slow but steady, with fewer natural predators besides whales, and with the stability of an environment that changes little over millennia. Animals like the colossal squid can reach sizes beyond what seems possible elsewhere. And yet, for all its bulk, the colossal squid is soft. Like the giant squid, it has no bones, no armour, no shell. Its body is mostly water, fragile outside its natural pressure. When pulled to the surface, its tissues deteriorate quickly, leaving researchers with little more than damaged remains. That's why our best understanding of this animal comes not from capturing it alive, but from indirect evidence. Fishermen's reports, stranded carcasses, and the stomachs of whales. Time and again, when scientists have examined the contents of sperm whales, they found beaks from colossal squid. Some of these beaks are so large that they suggest specimens bigger than any we've seen. It is humbling to think that the greatest evidence we have of these creatures is what remains after they've been eaten. There is another layer to this mystery. Unlike the giant squid, which is spread across much of the world's oceans, the colossal squid seems to be confined to Antarctic waters. That makes it harder to study since those regions are among the most remote and hostile on Earth. Icy storms, floating ice, and extreme cold make exploration difficult. Submersibles and research ships can only spend so long there, and so the colossal squid remains a rare encounter, glimpsed in flashes, never fully understood. Some myths have grown around it, as they did with the giant squid. Stories of tentacles dragging ships under, of monsters lurking beneath the ice. But what we know so far paints a different picture. This is not a mindless destroyer, but an apex predator perfectly adapted to its environment. Its hooks, its eyes, its bulk, all are tools for survival in a place where life is harsh and competition is fierce. The question of its maximum size is still open. The largest confirmed specimens are already massive, but the beaks found in whales suggest that bigger individuals may exist. Could there be colossal squid weighing a ton, longer than any yet recorded? Possibly. Until we find one, the speculation will remain. And that uncertainty is part of the allure. The idea that somewhere, in the black waters around Antarctica, there are giants even larger than the ones we've seen, moving unseen through the dark, is enough to remind us how little we've uncovered. For scientists, every fragment of data is valuable. A piece of tissue, a photograph, a video clip, each helps build a picture of how these animals live. But there is so much we don't know. Do they migrate seasonally? Do they spawn in deep trenches? How do the young survive in such a hostile environment? Even the basic details of their biology remain guesses, and so the colossal squid stands as a symbol of the ocean's mysteries. Not extinct, not mythical, but alive and powerful, just beyond our reach. Perhaps the most striking thought is that these creatures have been here all along. Long before humans learned to sail, long before we began mapping the coasts, colossal squid swam the southern seas. They battled whales, hunted fish, and drifted through the dark, unseen and unstudied. Only now, with our technology, are we beginning to catch up. But even with all our efforts, they still hold the advantage. They live where we cannot. They thrive where our machines falter. They remain, in every sense, shadows larger still. And the deeper we go into this hidden world, the more we realise that colossal squid are only part of the story. Because in the deep sea, size takes many forms. Some giants are predators with teeth and hooks. Others are slow, ancient wanderers that have ruled the darkness since long before we walked the earth. Sharks have been with us for hundreds of millions of years. Long before the first trees stood on land, before the continents drifted into their current shapes, sharks were already swimming. They have seen entire worlds rise and fall. They watched dinosaurs appear, flourish and vanish, and they remained. They have outlasted ice ages, mass extinctions, and changes that reshape the entire planet. If whales and squid are the headline giants of the deep, then sharks are its ghosts, ancient, enduring, and older than continents themselves. When most people think of sharks, they picture great whites slicing through the surface, or hammerheads cruising tropical reefs. But these are the familiar ones. The ocean holds others, ones that never rise into the sunlight, that live their lives in the depths where the water is black and the pressure relentless. These are the deep sea sharks. They are not always the biggest in length, though some grow impressively large. Their power comes instead from survival. They are living fossils, reminders of a time before mammals, before birds, before flowering plants. They are rulers not because they dominate with size alone, but because they have endured where others vanished. One of the strangest is the frilled shark. At first glance, it looks more like something from the fossil record than from today's oceans. Its body is long and eel-like, stretching up to 6 feet, but it is the mouth that leaves an impression. Lined with rows of needle-like teeth, curved and overlapping, it looks like a trap designed never to let go. Scientists who have examined its jaws describe them as backward-pointing hooks, each tooth angled to pull prey deeper into the mouth with every attempt to escape. This design is not modern efficiency, but ancient adaptation. Frilled sharks are thought to be among the most primitive living sharks, with features that have changed little for millions of years. They glide through the deep slowly, conserving energy, and strike suddenly when prey wanders close. Then there is the goblin shark, a creature so unusual that some have called it a living alien. With its long, flattened snout and jaw that can shoot forward like a spring-loaded trap, it is not built for speed but for ambush. Found in depths of over 4,000 feet, goblin sharks spend most of their time in the dark, waiting for the chance to snap at fish or squid. When it attacks, its jaws extend outward faster than the eye can follow, grabbing prey with needle-sharp teeth. Its body is soft, its muscles weaker than shallow water species, a common trait of deep-sea animals. But in the world it inhabits, brute strength is less important than surprise. Another ghost of the deep is the blunt-nosed six-gill shark. While most sharks have 5 gill slits, this species has 6, a feature that links it to ancient ancestors. And it is no small creature. 6-gill sharks can grow over 20 feet long, making them among the largest predators of the deep. They are slow-moving but powerful, with wide heads and strong jaws. Their range is vast, from continental slopes to deep trenches, and they feed on fish, rays, squid, and even carrion. What makes them so remarkable is their lineage. Fossils similar to them date back over 200 million years, a time when Pangaea still existed as a single supercontinent. To see a 6-gill shark today is to see a design that predates many of the world's mountain ranges. In colder northern waters, another deep-sea giant drifts quietly through the dark, the Greenland shark. This species may not look impressive at first. Its body is sluggish, its movements slow, and its appearance unremarkable compared to the sleek forms of other sharks. But it holds a record that no other vertebrate can match. It is the longest-lived animal known. Studies of its eye lenses suggest that Greenland sharks can live for centuries, with the oldest individuals possibly reaching over 400 years. Imagine that. A shark born before the age of Shakespeare still alive today, swimming slowly beneath the ice. These sharks grow slowly, only about a centimetre a year, but in the deep, where time itself seems to stretch, slow growth is not a disadvantage. It is a survival strategy. Their diet is varied. They eat fish, seals, and sometimes even carrion. In one study, remains of polar bears, horses, and moose were found in Greenland shark stomachs, likely scavenged from carcasses that drifted into the sea. They are not hunters of speed, but opportunists of patience. With slow metabolisms and long lives, they thrive in an environment that would exhaust faster species. And while they may look ghostly, with pale skin and small eyes often clouded by parasites, they are proof that endurance is its own form of dominance. The idea that sharks are apex predators is well known, but in the deep sea their role is more complicated. Food is scarce, and many of them rely as much on scavenging as on hunting. Yet their presence shapes ecosystems. When a whale carcass falls to the seafloor, sharks are often among the first to arrive, stripping away flesh before smaller creatures move in. Their jaws, adapted for crushing and tearing, can dismantle even the toughest remains. In this way, they help recycle nutrients in a place where every scrap of energy is precious. What's striking is how varied these deep-sea sharks are. Some, like lantern sharks, are small, glowing with bioluminescent patches along their bodies. These lights may help them camouflage in the faint glow of the twilight zone, or signal to others of their kind. Others, like the cookie-cutter shark, are infamous for biting perfect circular chunks from larger animals, including whales, dolphins, and even submarines. At just a foot long, the cookie-cutter hardly qualifies as a giant in size, but its audacity makes it a giant in reputation. Imagine being a whale, vast and powerful, only to find yourself scarred by a bite from a shark the size of a loaf of bread. Even in the deep, scale does not always decide importance. The endurance of these species raises questions about what it takes to survive in the deep. Unlike many shallow water animals, deep-sea sharks have adapted to cold, pressure, and scarcity. Their metabolisms are slower, their movements measured, their lives stretched over decades or even centuries. They do not need to race, they simply persist, and that persistence has carried them through changes that wiped out countless other species. But survival in the modern world brings new challenges. Even though most humans will never see a deep-sea shark, our activities still reach them. Fishing nets sink deeper, targeting species once considered unreachable. Bycatch captures sharks that were never meant to be caught. Climate change alters ocean currents and temperatures, shifting the delicate balance of ecosystems that have remained stable for millennia. For creatures that measure their lives not in years but in centuries, change on this scale is a profound threat. Yet even so they endure. The Greenland shark still drifts under Arctic ice. Six-gill sharks still cruise the slopes of underwater canyons. Goblin sharks still wait in ambush where light has never touched. They are reminders that the ocean story is much longer than ours. We measure centuries as great spans of time. For them, centuries are simply lifetimes. They connect us not just to the present ocean, but to the ancient seas that shaped the earth we know. And perhaps that is why they feel like ghosts. Not because they are spectral or unreal, but because they carry with them the weight of deep time. When you look at a deep-sea shark, you're not just seeing an animal. You're seeing a lineage that has witnessed events beyond our imagination. Continents splitting, oceans forming, climates shifting from sweltering heat to frozen ice. And through it all, the sharks remained. They are not extinct relics. They are living, breathing rulers of the deep. Not always the biggest, not always the most spectacular, but always present, always watching, always enduring. In their silence, in their patience, in their unbroken survival, they remind us of what it means to be ancient and yet still alive. And as the journey continues, beyond even the realm of these ghosts, other giants appear. Not with bones, not with jaws, but with armoured shells and bodies that look like they belong to another planet entirely. They are the isopods, the crustacean behemoths of the abyss, and they wait in the darkness just ahead. Among the many sharks that inhabit the deep, two stand out as true titans. They don't match the great white in speed, they don't glide through coral reefs in the daylight, and they rarely appear in documentaries because they prefer the black depths where cameras seldom go. Yet in size, endurance and mystery, they surpass almost everything else. These are the blunt-nosed six-gill shark and the Greenland shark, two giants that move so slowly, so deliberately, and live for so long that they seem less like ordinary animals and more like guardians of deep time. The blunt-nosed six-gill shark is a reminder of the ocean's past. Most modern sharks have 5 gill slits on each side of their heads, but as its name suggests, this species has 6. That detail might seem minor, but it connects the animal to a much older lineage. Fossils from hundreds of millions of years ago show similar features, making the six-gill a living link to an ancient world. It is also enormous. Adults can grow longer than 20 feet, with some unconfirmed reports suggesting even greater lengths. Imagine a shark as long as a bus, moving slowly through the shadows of an underwater canyon. Unlike the sleek, streamlined hunters of the surface, the six-gill is heavier, bulkier, and built for the long game. Their bodies are adapted for the deep. They range across continental slopes and submarine canyons, usually found between 600 and 3,000 feet, though they can go deeper still. Some individuals venture upward at night to feed, then sink back into the dark by day. Their diet is varied: fish, rays, squid, crustaceans, and carrion. They are opportunists, using patience rather than speed. Their jaws are wide, armed with serrated teeth designed to slice and crush. When a whale carcass falls to the seafloor, six-gill sharks are often among the first arrivals, tearing chunks of flesh from the immense body before smaller scavengers move in. Despite their size, encounters with them are rare. They are not aggressive toward humans, but divers who have been lucky enough to meet one describe the experience as humbling. To see a six-gill emerge from the gloom, its pale eyes reflecting the light, its body larger than a car, is to glimpse something primal. It is not flashy or fast, but it radiates presence. It is a giant that has survived by being patient, by conserving energy, by outlasting rather than outpacing. If the six-gill represents endurance through size and ancient design, the Greenland shark takes endurance to another extreme. Found in the icy waters of the North Atlantic and Arctic, this species may be the slowest moving shark of all, yet it holds a record unmatched by any other vertebrate: lifespan. Scientists studying the layers of proteins in their eye lenses have estimated that Greenland sharks can live for centuries. Some may reach ages of 400 years or more, making them the longest-lived vertebrates known. That means a shark alive today could have been born in the early 1600s, before Newton's laws of motion, before telescopes revealed Saturn's rings, before modern science even existed. They grow slowly, adding only a centimetre or two each year. Females don't even reach reproductive age until they are well over a century old. That pace seems unimaginable compared to our own lifespans, but in the deep, where everything moves at a different rhythm, it works. The cold water slows their metabolism, the scarcity of food demands efficiency, and their bodies seem built for a life measured not in decades but in epochs. Despite their slow movement, Greenland sharks are predators as well as scavengers. They feed on fish and seals, and they are known to take advantage of weakened or sleeping prey. Some studies suggest they may ambush seals by drifting silently near the surface ice, waiting for an opportunity. They also scavenge freely, consuming carrion that drifts into their path. Their stomachs have revealed some surprising finds: remains of reindeer, polar bears, even horses, likely from animals that died near the coast and ended up in the water. Nothing goes to waste in their environment, and the Greenland shark is perfectly adapted to make use of whatever it finds. They are not graceful creatures. Their skin is rough, their movements sluggish, their eyes often clouded by parasitic copepods that cling to the cornea and feed on tissue. These parasites may leave them nearly blind, but in the dark waters they inhabit, sight is not the primary sense. Instead, they rely on smell and the detection of vibrations to find food. Even half-blind, they continue to thrive. Their sheer resilience makes them seem less like hunters and more like enduring forces of nature, moving slowly through the centuries. The question of how they can live so long fascinates scientists. Part of the answer lies in their slow metabolism. In the near-freezing waters they inhabit, everything is slowed down. Heart rate, growth, cellular processes, all run at a pace that reduces wear and tear. Fewer damaged cells, fewer opportunities for age-related decline, but even that does not fully explain it. Their longevity is still a mystery, one that could teach us about aging not only in sharks, but in vertebrates in general. Studying them may hold clues about how to extend healthy lifespans, though capturing and keeping such giants is nearly impossible. Most of what we know comes from specimens caught accidentally in nets. There is a sadness in that too. Greenland sharks are not targeted for food in most places, but they are sometimes caught incidentally. In the past, they were hunted for their liver oil, which was used in lamps and machinery. Today, bycatch remains a threat. For a species that takes centuries to reach maturity, even small losses can have dramatic effects on populations. Every individual represents centuries of survival, centuries of slow growth, centuries of resilience. To lose one is to erase a history longer than entire human nations have existed. Both the six-gill and the Greenland shark remind us that being a titan is not always about speed or aggression. It is about scale, patience, and time. The six-gill connects us to the ancient past, a design that has worked for hundreds of millions of years and still thrives in the depths. The Greenland shark connects us to endurance itself, an animal that turns centuries into a single lifetime. They're giants not just in body, but in the stories they carry. The story of survival through ages of change, through pressures that crush steel, through darkness where almost nothing else can endure. Divers who have met six gills describe the experience as otherworldly, as though a shadow from prehistory drifted close. Fishermen who have caught Greenland sharks describe their astonishment at the sheer size, sometimes over 20 feet long, their weight measured in tons. These encounters are reminders that our planet still holds creatures that defy our usual sense of time and life. We live in decades, they live in centuries. We measure history in books and monuments. They carry it in their flesh. And while they drift through the abyss, they share those waters with other forms of giant life. Some crawl instead of swim. Some scuttle across the seafloor with armoured shells, their bodies stretched into shapes so alien they hardly seem like crustaceans at all. In the deep sea, even the scavengers can grow to monstrous size. As our descent continues, we leave behind the slow titans of shark kind and move toward the realm of giant isopods, the pillbugs of the abyss, creatures that have turned the art of patience into an entire way of life. On land, pillbugs are tiny. You see them under rocks in gardens, rolling into little armoured balls when disturbed. They are so small and familiar that it's easy to overlook them. But in the deep sea, their cousins grow to sizes that transform them from something almost invisible into one of the most striking scavengers of the abyss. These are the giant isopods, creatures that look like pillbugs scaled up to the size of puppies, with segmented armour, twitching antennae, and eyes that stare unblinking into the dark. They live on the seafloor hundreds to thousands of feet below the surface, crawling across mud plains that stretch farther than any desert on land. Down there, food is scarce. There are no lush forests, no rivers bringing nutrients, no sunlight fueling plants. Life relies on what falls from above: scraps of organic matter, dead fish, carcasses of whales, and even the occasional shower of tiny particles drifting down from the upper layers of the ocean. This rain of food is called marine snow, but for scavengers like the giant isopod, snow alone isn't enough. They wait for larger meals, things that sink, things that die, things that become opportunities, and when the opportunity comes, they are ready. Giant isopods are equipped with strong legs and sharp mouthparts designed to tear and shred. When a large carcass hits the bottom, they swarm, clambering over one another to get a share. Video footage from submersibles shows them covering the remains of fish, squid, even sharks, their pale bodies shifting and writhing like an alien tide. They can gorge themselves to the point of immobility, stuffing their bodies until they can barely move. Then they retreat and wait, sometimes for weeks or months, surviving on what they've stored. In a place where meals are unpredictable, the ability to feast and fast is crucial. What makes them truly astonishing is their size. While their garden relatives measure just a centimetre or two, giant isopods can grow over 2 feet long and weigh several pounds. The largest species, Bathynomus giganteus, is the most famous, but there are several other large species spread across the deep Atlantic, Pacific and Indian Oceans. Their size is thought to be another example of deep-sea gigantism, the trend where some invertebrates grow far larger in the abyss than their shallow water relatives. Cold temperatures, high pressure and scarcity of predators all play a role, but the exact reasons remain debated. What is clear is that in the dark plains of the seafloor, being big offers advantages. Larger bodies store more energy, move farther to find food, and survive longer between meals. Despite their eerie appearance, giant isopods are not dangerous to humans. They are scavengers, not hunters. Their role is vital, recycling nutrients from the remains of larger animals, turning death into life. Without scavengers like them, the deep would become a graveyard of unprocessed remains. Instead, they break down what falls, feeding themselves and leaving scraps for smaller organisms. They are part of a chain that keeps energy flowing in a place where energy is desperately scarce. And their bodies look almost mechanical. The segmented exoskeleton forms overlapping plates, each one flexible enough to allow movement yet strong enough to protect. Their eyes, large and reflective, are composed of thousands of facets, giving them a wide field of vision suited for the faintest glimmers of light. Their antennae wave constantly, sensing vibrations and chemical cues in the water. Watching one crawl across the seafloor is like watching a living relic from another time, a creature that seems more at home in science fiction than in the natural world. Aquariums that have managed to keep giant isopods in captivity report strange behaviours. Sometimes they go for weeks without eating, ignoring food placed directly in front of them. At other times, they devour meals with surprising speed. Their slow metabolism and unpredictable appetite make them challenging to study. Some have been known to survive over 5 years in tanks, feeding only occasionally. That endurance is a testament to how well adapted they are to the deep, where patience is not just a trait but a requirement. They are not fast movers. Their legs scuttle awkwardly, their bodies dragging over the mud. But speed is not necessary. They do not chase prey, they wait. They wander until chance brings them to food, or food to them, and when it does, they are relentless. Their strong jaws can strip flesh quickly, leaving only bones. Their armour protects them from other scavengers, though in the deep few animals bother with a creature so tough and so unappetizing. Predators prefer softer prey. The isopod's defence is its hardness, its resilience, its ability to outlast. The idea of a pill bug the size of a small dog unsettles some people. But in a way, it is simply nature repeating a pattern at a different scale. The same design that works in a garden works in the abyss. Segmented armour, scavenging habits, the ability to roll partially into a defensive curl. These features are as effective at 2 inches as they are at 2 feet. The deep sea magnifies the ordinary, taking what is familiar and turning it into something uncanny. The presence of giant isopods also raises questions about how life adapts to extreme environments. They are crustaceans related to crabs and shrimp, yet their bodies show how many different directions evolution can take. Instead of becoming streamlined swimmers or agile hunters, they became armoured walkers. Instead of relying on constant feeding, they rely on occasional gluts. Their strategy is survival by waiting, a strategy that has clearly worked for millions of years. Fossil evidence suggests that isopods have existed since the Carboniferous period, over 300 million years ago. While their giant deep-sea forms are more recent, the lineage itself is ancient. Another example of endurance through time. In some ways, they symbolize the deep itself. Silent, slow, patient, and strange. They are not the dramatic hunters that dominate documentaries. They do not leap, slash, or roar. But they are essential. They remind us that giants come in many forms. Some rule through speed, some through strength, and some simply by being there, always present, waiting, doing the work that keeps everything else alive. And though giant isopods may look alien, they're connected to us in ways we rarely notice. The pillbugs in your garden are distant relatives. The same lineage that scuttles under your feet also sprawls across the seafloor miles down. It's a humbling thought that the boundary between the familiar and the alien is thinner than it seems. What looks monstrous at one size is ordinary at another. Scale changes perception, but not the essence of life. Scientists suspect there may be even larger isopod species yet to be discovered. The deep is vast, and sampling is limited. Every few years, new species of Bathynomus are described, some only slightly smaller than the largest known. If larger ones exist, they're waiting in trenches and plains we have not yet explored. Considering that much of the deep sea remains unmapped, the possibility of even greater scavengers crawling in the dark is real. Encounters with them remind us of the strange balance of the deep ocean. Where we might expect emptiness, there are thriving communities. Where we might expect monsters, there are simply survivors. And the giant isopod, though it looks like a creature from a nightmare, is nothing more than a patient recycler, a custodian of the abyss, turning death into the fuel of life. The sight of one crawling across the seabed might unsettle the imagination, but it is also oddly calming. It does not lunge or attack. It does not hurry. It just moves methodically across the endless plains of the sea floor, doing what it has always done. In that way, it represents a kind of quiet certainty. A certainty that even in the darkest, most hostile places, life finds a way to endure. And as we follow it across the mud, we begin to notice other shapes. Not armoured ovals, but long, spindly legs stretching out like walking scaffolds. Another kind of giant emerges from the dark, not rolling into a ball, but striding across the bottom with a span so wide it seems impossible. Ahead of us waits the spider crab, a giant that wears its skeleton on the outside like steel beams, reminding us once again that in the deep, scale and form can take any shape. Among all the creatures of the deep, few look stranger than the Japanese spider crab. While most giants of the abyss rule with bulk or hidden strength, this one rules by reach. Its body is not large compared to whales or squid, but its legs stretch outward in a lattice of impossible span. Fully grown, its legs can reach across 12 feet from tip to tip. Imagine a dinner table, then picture it walking, slowly, across the seafloor. It is the largest arthropod alive today, and it looks like a piece of scaffolding come to life, a walking web of steel that roams the dark waters off Japan. The Japanese spider crab is not a new discovery. Fishermen in Japan have known about it for centuries, sometimes catching it in their nets, sometimes pulling up shells from the deep. But to most of the world it remains an alien sight. Its body, a spiny dome, is only about 1.5 feet across. It's the legs that make it monstrous. Long, jointed, thin but strong, they stretch outward in every direction, giving the animal a shape that seems almost mechanical. When it moves, the legs lift and fall in slow rhythm, like a machine with many levers working in perfect balance. Despite its alarming size and appearance, it is not a predator of fearsome reputation. The spider crab is more scavenger than hunter, feeding on carrion, mollusks and detritus. Its claws are strong enough to crack shells, but it is not built for speed. It does not chase. Instead, it walks patiently across the bottom, searching for food. The slow pace fits the world it inhabits, where rushing wastes energy and patience ensures survival. One of the most striking things about this crab is how it blends into its environment. Its shell is often covered with sponges, algae and other small organisms, which it sometimes deliberately attaches as camouflage. This disguises it against the rocky seafloor, breaking up its outline. To a predator, it may look like nothing more than part of the terrain. To a scavenger, it may look like just another rock. In the deep, where visibility is limited, deception is a powerful tool. The Japanese spider crab is also remarkable for its lifespan. Many crabs live only a few years, but this species can live for decades, possibly up to a century. That longevity, combined with its size, makes it a true giant among arthropods. Over those decades, it molts its shell many times, each time shedding the old exoskeleton and expanding into a new one. Molting is dangerous. Without its hard armor, the crab is vulnerable until the new shell hardens. But over time, this process allows it to grow larger and larger, stretching its legs until it becomes the colossal walker of the deep. Its habitat ranges from shallow waters during spawning season to depths of over 2,000 feet, where the pressure is immense and light never reaches. Down there, its spindly frame is perfectly suited for life on the bottom. Long legs allow it to move across uneven terrain, stepping over rocks and debris that would block smaller creatures. Its claws extend its reach even further, allowing it to grab food without having to move its entire body. It is a creature designed for reach rather than speed, patience rather than pursuit. Encounters with them in the wild are rare. Most people who have seen one have done so in aquariums, where a handful are displayed. Behind glass their size becomes obvious. Standing near one, you realise just how far those legs can stretch, and how alien they look when moving in rhythm. They are both mesmerising and unsettling, like a machine built by something not quite human. Yet in the ocean, they are simply another example of form following function. Long legs mean a wider search area for food. Strong claws mean access to hard-shelled prey. A camouflaged body means survival against predators. Each part of the design serves a purpose, and together it creates one of the most extraordinary crustaceans on Earth. For centuries, the spider crab has also been a part of human culture in Japan. Stories and legends describe them as strange beings, sometimes even as spirits. In some regions, they have been harvested for food, though their rarity and the difficulty of catching them at great depths has kept them from being common. In modern times, conservation concerns have grown. Overfishing, habitat destruction, and climate change threaten many marine species, and the spider crab is no exception. Its slow growth and long lifespan make it vulnerable to population declines, since recovery takes decades. Scientists studying the spider crab face challenges similar to those studying other deep-sea giants. Bringing one to the surface often proves fatal. The change in pressure and temperature stresses their bodies, and many do not survive long in captivity. Even when they do, their behaviour can be altered by the artificial environment. Watching one behind glass offers only a glimpse of its natural life. To truly understand it, we would need to follow it into the dark, into the cold plains where it walks unseen. But that is not easy. The deep ocean remains one of the hardest places to study, and creatures like the spider crab remain partially hidden simply because they live where we cannot. What fascinates researchers is not just their size, but what that size tells us about evolution in the deep. Crustaceans as a group have pushed their bodies into many forms: tiny shrimp, armoured lobsters, delicate krill. The spider crab represents the extreme of one strategy: stretch outward rather than grow bulky. Its body is compact, but its legs expand its reach, making it appear far larger than it truly is. This is a different kind of gigantism, one based not on mass but on span. It is a reminder that being a giant does not always mean being heavy. Sometimes it means being wide enough to touch more of the world. And in the deep, where food is rare, that span makes all the difference. A spider crab can cover more ground with fewer steps, reaching food sources others would miss. Its long arms allow it to probe crevices, to grab what smaller crabs cannot. Every inch of leg is an extension of survival. It may look bizarre to us, but in its world it is perfectly logical. When you picture one walking across the seafloor, imagine the silence. No rushing, no thrashing, just legs lifting and falling one after another, like a slow-motion dance. The crab is not in a hurry. It has decades ahead of it. Decades to feed, to molt, to wander. In that silence, it becomes part of the landscape itself, a moving piece of the seabed that shifts only when food demands it. Encounters with spider crabs remind us again of the scale of life in the ocean. On land, the largest arthropods are small compared to mammals, insects, spiders, crustaceans, all dwarfed by elephants, bears, or even dogs. But in the sea, freed from the constraints of gravity and supported by water, arthropods can grow far larger. The Japanese spider crab is proof of that potential, a creature that takes what we know from our backyards and stretches it into something extraordinary. And yet, for all its size, it is not a monster. It does not attack ships, it does not hunt humans, it does not dominate the deep with violence. It simply walks, slowly and silently, across the seabed. It rules not by aggression, but by presence. Its size alone ensures that it cannot be ignored. As the journey continues, leaving behind the crab and its spindly frame, the deep reveals yet more giants. Some are soft, gelatinous, and almost transparent, growing to lengths greater than the spider crab's span. They drift rather than walk, glowing faintly in the darkness, their bodies delicate yet vast. These are the jellyfish and their kin, gelatinous giants that rule by numbers and by size, reminding us again that the abyss belongs to many forms of life, not just those with bones or shells. In the twilight of the deep ocean, where the last traces of sunlight have long disappeared and the water becomes a permanent night, there exists a creature with a name that sounds like it was invented for horror stories: the vampire squid. Its name suggests something monstrous, a blood-drinking predator with wings of darkness. The reality is stranger, and perhaps even more unsettling, because the vampire squid is not a bloodsucker at all. It is something else entirely, a survivor with features so unique that scientists had to create a new order just to classify it. The vampire squid lives at depths between 2,000 and 3,000 feet, in waters known as oxygen minimum zones. These are places where oxygen is so scarce that most animals cannot survive, but the vampire squid can. Its metabolism is slower than almost any other cephalopod, allowing it to endure in conditions that would kill others. Its blood contains copper-based hemocyanin, which binds oxygen more efficiently in the cold and low-oxygen water. It is, in every sense, adapted to a world where almost nothing else can breathe. Its appearance explains the name. The body is small compared to the giants we've met so far, usually around a foot long, but it looks like something stitched together from nightmare fragments. Its body is soft and gelatinous, a dark red or black in colour. Between its arms stretches a web of skin, like a cloak. When threatened, it can invert this cloak, wrapping its arms around itself and exposing rows of spiny projections. In this defensive posture, it looks like a sinister umbrella, spines outward, body hidden. Early scientists who saw preserved specimens were reminded of bats and vampires, and the name stuck. But instead of drinking blood, the vampire squid survives on something far less dramatic: It feeds on detritus, flakes of dead plankton, tiny bits of organic matter, fragments of marine snow drifting down through the water column. To catch this rain of debris, the vampire squid extends two long retractable filaments covered in mucus and sensory cells. These filaments act like sticky fishing lines, collecting whatever drifts past. The squid then draws the material back toward its mouth, wrapping it in mucus and forming it into food. In a world where large prey is scarce and oxygen is limited, this strategy is brilliant. It makes the vampire squid one of the very few animals adapted to feed almost entirely on detritus in the deep. Its behaviour is as strange as its body. Unlike many cephalopods, which are fast and aggressive, the vampire squid drifts slowly. It uses very little energy, pulsing its fins gently to stay afloat. When disturbed, it does not fight or flee quickly. Instead, it performs a display. It flips inside out, cloaking itself in its own webbing, and flashes bioluminescent lights along its body. The tips of its arms glow with blue light. Its body pulses with shifting patterns. In the pitch black, this can confuse predators, startling them long enough for the squid to drift away. Sometimes, instead of flashing, it releases glowing clouds of mucus that linger in the water, a luminous distraction that draws attention away from the animal itself. Imagine a creature that bleeds light instead of blood, shedding glowing clouds to vanish into the dark. The vampire squid belongs to its own order, Vampiromorphida, and has no close living relatives. It is a lineage that branched off from other cephalopods millions of years ago and has remained distinct ever since. This evolutionary isolation makes it a relic, a reminder of ancient oceans when different lineages of squid and octopus were just beginning to diverge. Studying it gives scientists clues about how cephalopods evolved, but it also highlights how unique adaptations can allow survival in extreme niches. While others squid race and hunt, the vampire squid drifts and waits. While others rely on oxygen-rich waters, it thrives where oxygen is nearly gone. Its uniqueness is its strength. It is small compared to whales or colossal squid, yet it rules its own kingdom. In the oxygen minimum zones where predators are scarce, the vampire squid has little competition. Its strange feeding method means it doesn't need to chase prey. Its slow metabolism means it doesn't need to eat often. It is not a giant in length or weight, but it is a giant in terms of survival strategy. Few animals can claim such dominance over such a hostile niche. Encounters with it are rare. The depths it inhabits are difficult to study, and its fragile body makes it almost impossible to capture intact. Submersibles occasionally catch glimpses of it, drifting silently with its cloak spread, arms trailing. Video footage reveals how delicate it is, moving with a softness that contrasts with its intimidating name. To see one alive is to realise that the vampire squid is not a monster, but a marvel. It is a creature perfectly balanced between fragility and endurance. Its role in the ecosystem is also important. By feeding on detritus, it recycles material that would otherwise drift uselessly. In doing so, it keeps energy moving through the system. It is part of the great chain that connects the surface world with the deep. The plankton that bloom in sunlight eventually die and drift down. The vampire squid gathers their remains, turning the waste of the upper ocean into sustenance for itself. It is a link between light and darkness, between the sunlit world above and the abyss below. The vampire squid also demonstrates how misleading names can be. To call it a vampire is to imagine fangs and predation, but its reality is gentler, slower, stranger. Its cloak is not for attack, but for defense. Its glowing clouds are not weapons, but distractions. Its filaments are not harpoons, but fishing lines for dust. Yet the name captures something true, if not literal. In its black cloak, drifting in eternal night, glowing faintly in the dark, it does look like something out of a Gothic dream. Perhaps that is why the name has endured. It is not accurate, but it is evocative, and in a way, it reminds us that the deep sea itself has always been a place where imagination and reality blur. What remains mysterious is how many of them there are, how widely they are spread, and how long they live. Their fragile bodies leave little fossil evidence. Their soft tissues decay quickly when they die. Much of what we know comes from rare captures and video recordings. For all we have learned, they remain elusive, drifting in silence where our eyes cannot follow. They are not giants of bulk, but they are giants of endurance, specialists in a niche that seems impossible. They remind us that not all rulers of the deep are massive hunters or armoured scavengers. Some are small, patient and subtle. Their reign is quieter but no less impressive. And as we leave them behind, still drifting under their cloaks of darkness, another shape begins to stir in the gloom. Something long, ribbon-like, with a body so thin it seems impossible, yet stretching longer than almost any other fish alive. This is the oarfish, the great serpent of the Twilight Zone, a creature so strange and so long that it gave rise to legends of sea serpents in every culture that encountered it. In the twilight zone of the ocean, where dim light still filters faintly from the surface above but true darkness lies just below, there lives a creature so long and so unusual that it has been mistaken for a sea serpent for centuries. Sailors told stories of it rising from the depths like a silver ribbon, undulating across the surface, stretching longer than any fish they had ever seen. These stories were often dismissed as exaggerations or myths. Yet, as with so many ocean legends, the truth was stranger still. The oarfish is real, it is immense, and it is one of the strangest giants to inhabit the mid-water world between light and darkness. The oarfish is the longest bony fish alive today. Confirmed specimens have reached lengths of around 30 feet, and unverified reports suggest they may grow even longer, perhaps over 50 or 60 feet. Unlike the sharks and squid of the deep, the oarfish has no bulk or hooks or teeth designed for tearing apart prey. Instead, its body is thin and ribbon-like, as if a strand of silver fabric had come alive. Along its entire length runs a dorsal fin, beginning just above its eyes and continuing all the way to the tail. That fin undulates constantly, creating ripples that push the fish gently through the water. It does not dart or thrash. It glides, moving with the slow, steady rhythm of something that has no reason to hurry. Its head carries a crest of red fins, long and delicate, that resemble streamers. In the gloom of the Twilight Zone, these crimson banners add to its strange, almost ceremonial appearance. To sailors who saw one near the surface, it must have looked otherworldly. A long, silver serpent with blood-red plumes rising and falling in the swells. No wonder so many cultures considered it an omen, a messenger from the deep, or even a monster. Unlike many deep-sea creatures, the oarfish does not confine itself entirely to darkness. It is a denizen of the mesopelagic zone, between 650 and 3,300 feet deep, though it has been recorded deeper. Every so often they appear near the surface, particularly when sick, dying, or disturbed by storms and earthquakes. When they do, they often end up washing ashore, their immense bodies creating a spectacle. Photos of these strandings circulate quickly, sparking fascination and fear. People see a fish longer than a car, thin as a ribbon but impossibly long, and it feels like an encounter with myth-made flesh. For a long time, very little was known about their behaviour. They are fragile, with soft bodies that are easily damaged, so catching and studying them is difficult. Their scales are tiny and reflective, giving them a silvery sheen, but their flesh is watery and weak compared to other fish. They are built not for combat but for drifting. Their mouths are small, toothless, and designed for eating plankton, krill and tiny fish. They do not chase prey but simply open their mouths and take in what passes. It is a strategy of patience, relying on the constant rain of life in the ocean's middle depths. Their reproductive habits are still not fully understood. It is believed that females release buoyant eggs into the water, which then drift with the currents. Larvae hatch near the surface and gradually descend as they grow, joining the twilight world of their parents. Sightings of juveniles are extremely rare, leaving much of their early life cycle shrouded in mystery. What makes them stand out most beyond their size is the way they move. Unlike most fish, which propel themselves with tails, the oarfish swims by creating waves along its long dorsal fin. This allows it to hover almost vertically in the water, head pointed upward, body trailing below like a drifting banner. Submersible footage has captured this posture, revealing a fish that seems less like an animal and more like a living ribbon suspended in space. To see it is to be reminded that the ocean often produces shapes that defy expectation, forms that look more like imagination than reality. Throughout history, oarfish have been linked to sea serpent legends. From the Mediterranean to the Pacific, sailors spoke of long, snake-like creatures rising from the depths, glinting silver, sometimes stretching as far as the eye could follow. These accounts often match the appearance of oarfish perfectly. In some cultures, they were considered omens of earthquakes or tsunamis, their rare appearances interpreted as warnings from the deep. While there is no scientific basis for that belief, the association persists. The mystery of why they occasionally surface has only added to their legend. Encounters with a living oarfish are so rare that each one becomes an event. In 2013, 2 washed up in California within days of each other, sparking headlines worldwide. Divers and researchers who have glimpsed them alive describe them as ethereal, moving with slow grace, their bodies shimmering like mirrors in the dim light. Unlike sharks or squid, which exude raw power or alien menace, the oarfish exudes strangeness. It does not fit the patterns we expect from fish. It does not hunt. It does not flee quickly. It simply exists, stretched out like a silver thread across the water column. From an evolutionary perspective, their design makes sense. In the deep, energy efficiency is everything. A long, thin body requires less muscle to maintain buoyancy. Feeding on plankton means they do not need powerful jaws. Their slow swimming conserves energy. They are not built for fighting or chasing, but for endurance in a world where food is scattered and movement is costly. Their gigantism, then, is not about strength, but about reach. A longer body can support more thin surface, more ability to drift and maneuver gently through the water. For humans, though, the appeal of the oarfish lies not in its efficiency, but in its mythic quality. It looks like a dragon. It looks like the very image of a sea serpent. In every culture that has seen it, it has sparked imagination. And yet, unlike the monsters of legend, it is harmless. It drifts. It feeds quietly. It avoids confrontation. It is a giant that rules not by force but by presence. Its appearance alone is enough to inspire awe. The oarfish reminds us that the ocean's giants take many forms. Some are predators with jaws and hooks. Some are scavengers armoured in shells. Some are drifters that glow faintly in the dark. And then there is the oarfish, a ribbon that threads through the twilight zone, its body shimmering silver, its fins glowing red, its presence both real and mythic. And as we follow it deeper, letting its long body vanish into the gloom, the lights of other creatures begin to appear. Pinpricks of blue and green, flares of sudden brightness, entire bodies glowing softly like lanterns in the dark. These are the bioluminescent giants of the abyss, fish with jaws that can unhinge, bodies that stretch wider than they seem, and lights that guide them through eternal night. Ahead waits the gulper eel with its impossible mouth, and the lantern fish, rulers of the twilight in numbers beyond counting. Among the most surreal of the deep-sea creatures are the ones whose bodies seem designed around exaggeration. Nothing demonstrates that better than the gulper eel. It is not a predator in the sense of speed or strength. Its body is thin and ribbon-like, its tail stretching behind it like a whip. But at the front, its mouth opens into a cavern so large it looks impossible compared to the rest of its frame. The gulper eel's head and jaws can balloon outward, creating a mouth big enough to swallow prey nearly its own size. It is a design that feels like something out of imagination, yet it is very real, adapted for life in a world where meals are rare and opportunities must be seized without hesitation. The gulper eel lives in the midnight zone, thousands of feet below the surface. Its body can reach 6 feet long, but most of that length is thin tail. The jaws dominate its appearance, capable of opening wider than its body is tall. Inside the mouth are small, sharp teeth, but these are secondary to the sheer size of the gape. Instead of chasing prey, the gulper eel drifts and waits, lunging suddenly when a fish or squid passes close enough. The mouth expands like a net, engulfing the water around the prey, and then snaps shut. Even if the meal is large, the stomach can expand to accommodate it. In a world of scarcity, the ability to swallow big saves energy and increases survival. Its tail adds to the strangeness. At the end is a bioluminescent organ, a small glowing bulb that can emit pink or red light. The gulper eel uses this as a lure, wriggling the glowing tip to attract curious fish or invertebrates. In the perpetual night of the deep, light is an irresistible signal. Creatures that approach the glow find themselves suddenly inside the cavernous mouth of the eel, It is a strategy seen elsewhere in the deep. Anglerfish carry lures above their jaws, but the gulper eel combines the tactic with its immense mouth, making it one of the most bizarre ambush predators in the ocean. Despite its unsettling appearance, the gulper eel is fragile. Its body is soft, its muscles weak, its bones light. It is not built for battle or for powerful swimming. It survives by efficiency, conserving energy and striking when the chance arises. This design means it cannot be easily studied. Caught specimens often collapse under the change in pressure, their bodies unable to withstand the surface environment. What we know of them comes from rare deep-sea footage, trawls that bring back damaged specimens, and occasional lucky encounters. Each glimpse adds to our understanding, but the full picture of their lives remains hidden. They are not alone in their realm. Sharing the midnight zone are lanternfish, among the most numerous vertebrates on Earth. Individually they are small, usually only a few inches long, but in terms of biomass they may be the most abundant fish in the world. Some estimates suggest that lanternfish as a group make up more weight than any other vertebrate species combined. Their numbers are staggering, and in the twilight and midnight zones they are the true giants, not in body size but in influence. Lanternfish are named for the bioluminescent organs that line their bodies. These tiny lights glow in patterns that vary between species. Some use them for camouflage, matching the faint glow of the surface above so predators below cannot see their silhouettes. Others use them for communication, signalling to mates or members of their shoals. In the deep, where sight is limited, light becomes language, and lanternfish speak fluently in it. Every night, lanternfish perform one of the greatest migrations on Earth. As darkness falls, they rise from the deep, sometimes thousands of feet upward, to feed on plankton near the surface. At dawn, they descend again, retreating to safety in the dark. Billions of lanternfish participate in this daily cycle, moving so much biomass that they influence entire oceanic systems. Submariners in World War II once mistook their dense shoals for false seafloors on sonar. So thick were the clouds of fish that they reflected signals like the seabed itself. Scientists call this phenomenon the deep scattering layer, a zone where light and sonar bounce back not from rocks but from the bodies of countless animals. Lanternfish are the backbone of this layer, creating a false floor of life that shifts upward and downward with the sun. Their role in the ecosystem cannot be overstated. They feed on plankton and in turn are preyed upon by squid, larger fish, whales, and seabirds. They are the great middle link of the ocean, transferring energy from the smallest producers to the giants above. Without them, the chain would collapse. Their abundance fuels the lives of predators across the globe. And yet, despite their numbers, they remain mysterious. Studying them is difficult, because they live deep by day and scatter widely at night. Nets capture some, sonar tracks their movements, but their true scale remains only partly known. The contrast between gulper eels and lanternfish shows the diversity of strategies in the deep. One grows enormous jaws to swallow whatever it can catch, relying on sudden opportunity. The other thrives in staggering numbers, tiny bodies forming vast armies of light and movement. Both are giants in their own ways, one by exaggeration of form, the other by sheer abundance. Together they demonstrate that dominance in the abyss is not limited to size alone. Influence, strategy, and adaptability all play roles in determining which creatures rule the dark. For humans, encounters with these animals remain rare. Gulper eels, when brought up from the deep, often arrive bloated and distorted, their delicate structures destroyed by pressure change. Lanternfish, while sometimes caught in large numbers by fishing nets, are too small and scattered to be easily studied alive. Submersibles and cameras have captured fleeting images, gulper eels drifting with their jaws agape, lanternfish glowing faintly in shoals, but most of their lives remain hidden. We know them through fragments and glimpses, and perhaps that is fitting. The deep sea does not reveal its secrets easily. Still, the evidence we do have is enough to remind us of their importance. The gulper eel, with its cavernous mouth and glowing lure, is a symbol of how strange evolution can become when shaped by scarcity. The lanternfish, with its glowing organs and mass migrations, is a reminder of how abundance can exist even in darkness. One is rare, one is common. One inspires unease, the other barely registers in our imagination. Yet both are essential, Both are rulers of their own domains, and as we pass them by, drifting deeper still, the forms become stranger. Fish with transparent heads and upward-facing eyes, jelly-like bodies with organs floating inside, creatures that look less like fish and more like experiments in light and glass. Ahead waits the barrel eye with its crystal dome of a skull and other gelatinous marvels that show us how far life can stretch its designs in the black heart of the ocean. In the endless dark of the deep, where pressure squeezes and light has long since vanished, eyes become everything. Most creatures down here either lose them entirely or adapt them into strange forms that capture larger animals, including turtles and some fish, feed on them, but in sheer numbers, jellyfish and comb jellies often dominate. In some regions, they form blooms so dense that they fill entire stretches of water, pulsing together in waves. These blooms can alter ecosystems, outcompeting fish, clogging fishing nets, even overwhelming power plant intakes. In the deep sea, where blooms are less common, their dominance is quieter but just as important. They recycle plankton, they form a key part of the diet for larger predators, and they move nutrients vertically as they migrate with the day-night cycle. Bioluminescence is central to their survival. Many gelatinous giants glow in blue or green, the most visible colours in deep water. Some produce steady glows, others flash in pulses, and a few release glowing particles when disturbed. These displays serve multiple purposes: to confuse predators, to attract prey, to communicate. In some species, light cascades across the body like a waterfall, turning the animal into a moving chandelier in the dark. For humans watching from submersibles, it is one of the most mesmerizing sights in nature. The ocean seems to light itself from within, with creatures that are little more than jelly carrying entire light shows inside their bodies. One of the most astonishing gelatinous giants is the siphonophore. Unlike jellyfish or comb jellies, a siphonophore is not a single animal, but a colony. Each colony is made up of specialized individuals called zooids, connected and cooperating as if they were one body. Some form floats, others tentacles, others digestive parts. Together they create a living chain that can stretch to lengths exceeding 100 feet. In 2020, researchers in Australia discovered a siphonophore estimated at 150 feet long, one of the longest animals ever recorded. It stretched in a spiral, glowing faintly, a colony so vast it seemed endless. Unlike a whale or squid, it was not one giant but many, fused into one drifting entity. In the deep, even individuality bends to the rules of survival. Watching siphonophores in action is both beautiful and eerie. Their tentacles trail behind like fishing lines, armed with stinging cells that capture whatever drifts into them. Each zooid does its part. One paralyzes, another digests, another absorbs. It is division of labour so complete that none of the zooids can survive on its own. Together they create a superorganism, a drifting empire of jelly. To encounter one is to realise that size in the ocean is not always about one body. It can be about many working as one. Despite their dominance, gelatinous giants are fragile. Waves destroy them, nets shred them. Changes in water temperature and oxygen can wipe out populations. Yet they rebound quickly, reproducing in bursts, turning scarcity into abundance almost overnight. This resilience, combined with their efficiency, makes them some of the most successful animals on Earth. Even as human activity reshapes the oceans, jellyfish often thrive, sometimes expanding as fish populations decline. It is a reminder that survival does not always belong to the strongest. Sometimes it belongs to the simplest. For humans, jellyfish and comb jellies often provoke unease. Their alien forms, their stings, their sudden blooms, all create discomfort. Yet in the deep sea where they rule quietly, they are more than nuisances. They are builders of ecosystems, recyclers of energy, and evidence that fragility can itself be a strength. They prove that giants do not need bones, claws, or teeth to dominate. They can drift, glow, and pulse, and still shape the ocean's story. To watch one drift in the dark is to witness something both calming and uncanny. Its body pulses rhythmically, its lights flicker gently, its tentacles trail endlessly. There is no rush, no sound, no violence, only the slow certainty of survival. In that stillness, gelatinous giants represent a kind of quiet rule. a reminder that the deep sea is not only about predators and battles, it is also about patience, about drifting with the currents, about letting the ocean itself carry you where you need to go. And as we drift past them, leaving behind their glowing forms and trailing ribbons, the scene changes again. Ahead, the seafloor begins to rise into ridges and vents, places where heat and minerals pour into the cold. Here, another kind of giant waits, not soft and transparent but rooted in place, building entire forests of tubes from nothing more than chemical energy. The hydrothermal fields are alive with creatures that challenge everything we thought life required, and among them, tube worms rise like red-tipped towers in the dark. On the abyssal plains, the seafloor is often quiet, a cold desert stretching endlessly, broken only by slow drifters and the occasional carcass that falls from above. But in certain places, the silence gives way to something extraordinary. Cracks in the Earth's crust open, releasing jets of superheated water rich with minerals. These are hydrothermal vents, deep-sea chimneys that billow black or white plumes into the darkness. Around them, life flourishes in a way that seems impossible, not fueled by sunlight but by chemistry. And among the most striking inhabitants of these vent fields are tube worms, behemoths of a world without sun, rising in colonies like forests of red-tipped spires. Tube worms were a shock when first discovered in the late 1970s. Until then, biologists believed that all ecosystems on Earth depended directly or indirectly on sunlight. Plants and algae capture light energy, animals feed on them, predators feed on prey, and so on. But when submersibles explored hydrothermal vents along the Galapagos Rift, they found dense communities of life thriving in total darkness. Towering white tubes, each topped with a crimson plume, clustered together in colonies that looked like underwater gardens. Yet no sunlight reached here, no plants grew here, no photosynthesis was possible. The discovery rewrote our understanding of life itself. The tube worms grow to remarkable sizes. Some species, like Riftia pachyptilla, reach lengths of over 8 feet, thicker than a person's arm. Entire colonies can cover large stretches of vent fields, creating living thickets of pale tubes swaying in the current. The red plumes at their tips are gill-like structures, rich in hemoglobin, which absorb oxygen, hydrogen sulfide, and carbon dioxide from the water. These gases are delivered to internal bacteria living inside the worm's body, and it is those bacteria that do the real work. Instead of photosynthesis, they use chemosynthesis, drawing energy from chemical reactions involving hydrogen sulfide. They convert these chemicals into organic molecules, feeding the worm in a partnership so complete that adult tube worms have no mouth, no stomach, no digestive system at all. They are entirely dependent on their bacterial symbionts, turning poisonous gases into food. It is a relationship unlike anything found in sunlight ecosystems, and it demonstrates that life can thrive on energy sources far removed from the sun. The sheer size of the tube worms adds to their mystery. In a world where food is usually scarce, they grow as tall as a person and live in dense colonies. The constant supply of vent chemicals fuels their growth, allowing them to become true giants of the deep. Some live for over 100 years, standing tall on the seafloor decade after decade, absorbing chemical energy from the Earth itself. Their size and longevity make them rulers of their environment, foundations upon which entire vent ecosystems are built. Crabs, shrimp, clams, and fish cluster among their tubes, feeding on scraps and on each other. Remove the tube worms and the community collapses. The vents themselves are dramatic. Black smokers spew superheated water filled with iron and sulfur, staining the plumes as they rise. White smokers release lighter minerals, creating ghostly towers of carbonate. The water jets out at temperatures over 700 degrees Fahrenheit, yet just a few feet away, the surrounding ocean is near freezing. Life here exists in razor-thin margins, balanced between lethal heat and lethal cold. The tube worms thrive at this edge, their colonies hugging the vent openings where chemicals are plentiful but temperatures survivable. The discovery of tube worm colonies had implications far beyond marine biology. If life could exist here, independent of sunlight, then perhaps it could exist elsewhere in the universe, on planets and moons where light never reaches the surface. Places like Europa, the icy moon of Jupiter, or Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, both of which harbour subsurface oceans warmed by hydrothermal activity. The tube worms prove that life does not require the sun. It requires energy, and energy can come from many sources. In that sense, they are not just giants of the deep, but also symbols of possibility far beyond Earth. Studying them remains challenging. Vent fields are remote, often miles below the surface, accessible only by submersibles and remotely operated vehicles. The worms themselves are fragile. Their tubes are sturdy, but their plumes are delicate, collapsing when removed from their environment. Keeping them alive at the surface is almost impossible. Most research is done in situ, using cameras and instruments lowered into the vent fields. Every dive reveals more about their biology, yet much remains unknown. How exactly do their bacteria colonize young worms? How long can individuals live? How do entire colonies establish and grow in new vents? Each question pushes us further into the mysteries of the deep. The scale of the colonies is breathtaking. Submersible footage shows forests of white tubes swaying gently, red plumes waving in the current. The effect is almost hypnotic, as if the seafloor itself has sprouted gardens. Among them crawl crabs, dart shrimp and swirl fish, all feeding on the bounty that chemosynthesis provides. Without the tube worms, none of these creatures would be here. They are architects of entire ecosystems, their bodies turning poisonous gas into the foundation of life. What's remarkable is their patience. Vents are not permanent. Over decades or centuries, geological shifts open new ones and close old ones. When a vent shuts down, the colony dies, but elsewhere, new cracks appear and new colonies take root. The worms cannot move quickly, but their larvae drift widely, carried by currents until they encounter the right chemical signals. Then they settle, grow, and begin the cycle again. In this way, tube worm colonies are pioneers, spreading from vent to vent, establishing life wherever the Earth's heat escapes into the ocean. Their size, their longevity, their partnership with bacteria all make them giants of the deep in more than one sense. They remind us that the ocean is not uniform. It is not simply a desert of cold and pressure. It is punctuated with oases, places where life explodes into abundance, fueled not by the sky but by the planet itself. To swim among them would be to walk through an alien forest, where the trees are worms and the leaves are red plumes swaying in chemical currents. For humans, this sight is both humbling and inspiring. Here are creatures that live in places we once thought uninhabitable, thriving without the resources we thought were essential. They challenge our assumptions, not just about biology, but about life's potential. They are proof that giants come in many forms, some with bones, some with teeth, and some with nothing but tubes, bacteria, and the chemistry of the earth. And as we leave their colonies behind, drifting away from the glowing chimneys and swaying plumes, the seafloor changes again. The vents fade, the heat dissipates, and the cold plains return. But even here, other giants rise from the seafloor, not worms this time, but corals and sponges, structures that grow slowly over centuries, building vast reefs and gardens in the darkness. Ahead lies another kind of behemoth, one made not of flesh alone but of stone-like skeletons, covering the deep with hidden forests that rival anything on land. Far from the volcanic vents, where the seafloor is colder and quieter, other giants begin to appear. They are not animals that swim or crawl, not hunters or scavengers, but builders. They rise from the seafloor slowly, almost invisibly, over centuries and millennia. They are corals and sponges of the deep, immense fields that stretch across underwater mountains, canyons, and ridges. Unlike the bright coral reefs of shallow waters, these giants live in darkness. They do not rely on sunlight. They do not need algae to fuel their growth. Instead, they feed directly from the currents, filtering tiny particles drifting in the water and turning them into structures that last longer than most civilizations. Deep-sea corals grow in forms similar to their shallow relatives. They build skeletons of calcium carbonate, branching into fans, whips, and massive tree-like shapes. Some grow as solitary individuals, while others cluster into dense forests covering entire slopes. Without sunlight to power photosynthesis, they grow slowly, sometimes only a few millimeters a year. But given time, their colonies reach immense sizes. Black corals, for example, can live for over 4,000 years. That makes them among the oldest living animals on Earth. To imagine a coral colony that sprouted before the pyramids were built and are still alive today, is to realise how vast the timescales of the deep truly are. Sponges add another layer to these fields. Unlike corals, they do not build stony skeletons, but their bodies, made of silica or spongy material, can reach massive proportions. Some glass sponges form latticed frameworks taller than a person, translucent structures that look like sculptures made of ice. Others form reefs many meters high and kilometers long. These sponge reefs were once thought extinct, known only from fossils dating back 100 million years. Then, in the late 20th century, living sponge reefs were discovered off the coast of Canada, hidden in cold, deep waters. They had been quietly thriving for millennia, their fragile bodies accumulating into structures larger than city blocks. Together, corals and sponges transform the deep sea floor into something unexpected. Where we might imagine barren mud plains, there are instead gardens of stone and glass, forests of branching structures, oases of life in the dark. Fish weave between coral branches, crabs cling to sponges, starfish and brittle stars climb their surfaces, feeding on whatever the currents deliver. These fields are not passive. They are living architecture, providing shelter and habitat for countless species. In some places, entire ecosystems depend on them, just as shallow reefs support tropical life. The scale of these deep communities is staggering. Submersible footage shows hillsides covered in coral trees, stretching as far as the cameras can see. Vast sponge reefs spread across the seafloor like alien cities. Some sponges are taller than a person and older than recorded history. Each one filters thousands of litres of water a day, removing bacteria and plankton, keeping the ocean clear. Collectively, they act as massive water processors, unseen by us but crucial to the balance of the deep. Their fragility makes them vulnerable. Unlike shallow corals, which are threatened by warming seas and bleaching, deep-sea corals and sponges face different dangers. Bottom trawling, where heavy nets are dragged across the seafloor, can destroy centuries of growth in minutes. Mining and drilling pose new risks, breaking apart structures that took millennia to form. Because they grow so slowly, recovery is almost impossible on human timescales. A coral broken today may take centuries to return, if it ever does. Despite this, they endure where untouched. Scientists studying ancient corals have used their skeletons as records of Earth's history. The layers of calcium carbonate store chemical signatures of past ocean conditions, temperatures, currents, even climate shifts. By analysing these skeletons, researchers can reconstruct thousands of years of environmental change. In this way, corals are not only giants of the deep but also archives of the planet's story, recording events long before we kept written records. Sponges tell a different story. Some of the compounds found within them have proven useful in medicine. Antiviral, antibacterial, and anti-cancer drugs have been derived from sponge chemicals. These slow-growing giants, hidden in the deep, may carry answers to diseases we struggle with on the surface. Each one is both a filter and a potential pharmacy, a reminder that the ocean holds more secrets than we realise. For those who encounter them by submersible, the sight of deep coral and sponge fields is surreal. Instead of the expected emptiness, the cameras reveal forests of white and red, branching upward like trees in a midnight landscape. Fish drift among them like birds in a canopy. Crabs scuttle over branches like squirrels on limbs. It is a world that mirrors the forests of land, yet is entirely separate, powered not by sunlight but by the ceaseless delivery of nutrients on the currents. What makes them giants is not just their size, but their persistence. They survive in places where resources are minimal, where light never shines, where growth is painfully slow. And yet, they endure, not for years or decades, but for millennia. Each colony is a monument to patience, each sponge a testament to survival by waiting. While predators come and go, while giants like squid and whales rise and vanish, the corals and sponges remain. They are the quiet background against which the drama of the deep unfolds. In their presence, time takes on a different meaning. For us, 100 years is an era. For them, it is a brief season. They measure time in centuries, in cycles of growth so slow that we can barely perceive them. They remind us that not all life rushes. Some grows quietly, almost invisibly, until one day it towers into immensity. Leaving these fields behind, we return to the moving giants of the abyss. On the seafloor, crustaceans wait, armoured and strange, some grown to sizes that seem impossible for creatures usually so small. Their bodies scuttle instead of drift, but they're just as much a part of the story, turning patience and toughness into survival in a world that rewards every adaptation. Ahead, the amphipods and other crustaceans of the deep stretch into new extremes, proving once again that the abyss magnifies the ordinary into the extraordinary. On land, most crustaceans we know are small, crabs scuttling sideways on beaches, shrimp in aquariums, pillbugs rolling into tiny balls under rocks. They are creatures of modest size, often overlooked. But in the deep, as with so many other lineages, size takes on a different meaning. The same groups that stay small near the surface can become immense in the abyss. Giant amphipods, lobsters of impossible shape, shrimps with glowing eyes, and crabs that seem almost skeletal appear out of the dark. They are strange in ways that make them look alien, yet they are part of the same crustacean family tree we know from our dinner plates and tide pools. Amphipods are a good place to begin. Normally, these creatures are tiny, shrimp-like scavengers that pick at debris in rivers, lakes, and shallow seas. A few millimetres long, they're abundant but easy to ignore. In the deep trenches of the ocean, however, they grow to sizes that transform them completely. Amphipods collected from the Mariana Trench and other abyssal regions have been found over a foot long. Imagine a shrimp swollen to the size of a loaf of bread, translucent and ghostly, drifting in water so dark and pressurized that few other animals survive. These amphipods feed on whatever reaches them. Bits of fish, sinking algae, even scraps from whale carcasses that fall into the trench. Their gigantism is linked to conditions of the deep. Cold water, immense pressure, and slow metabolism favour growth over time. Without many predators to keep them in check, amphipods simply grow larger. Their bodies, soft but armoured with thin exoskeletons, are perfectly adapted for drifting and scavenging. They are living proof of deep-sea gigantism, the trend that produces so many of the giants we've already met. What is small above becomes enormous below. But amphipods are not the only crustaceans exaggerated by the abyss. Shrimps in the deep take on strange forms. Some carry bioluminescent organs, glowing like tiny lanterns to confuse predators or to signal to each other. Others develop long, spindly legs to crawl across the mud plains in search of scraps. Still others drift in swarms so dense they resemble clouds, feeding on marine snow as it falls. In the silence of the deep, shrimps are often the movers of energy, passing food from the smallest particles up to larger scavengers. Crabs also take on unusual forms. Some species in the deep have elongated legs and narrow bodies, more spider-like than the familiar crabs of shorelines. Others cluster around hydrothermal vents, their shells coated in minerals from the chemical plumes. One of the strangest is the yeti crab, discovered only in 2005. Covered in silky white hairs along its arms, it looks almost fuzzy, a deep-sea creature wearing a coat. These hairs are not decoration. They harbour bacteria that feed on the vent's chemicals. The crab waves its arms back and forth in the plumes, farming the bacteria and then eating them. It is a lifestyle unlike anything on the surface, where farming is associated with humans. Here, in the abyss, a crab invented it long before we did. Even lobsters, familiar to us as food, take on different roles in the deep. Some grow long claws and spiny armour to defend themselves in a world where competition is fierce. Others evolve colours we never see at the surface, glowing red or purple in the dim light of submersibles. Their adaptations remind us that the deep is not a place of uniform emptiness. It is a patchwork of niches, each with its own giants filling roles we never imagined. What unites all of these crustaceans is their role as recyclers. They break down what falls from above, they feed on scraps, they clean the seafloor of decay. Without them, the abyss would choke on waste. With them, nutrients flow onward, supporting worms, jellies, fish, and even the colossal predators. In that sense, they are not just oddities. They are essential. They are the maintenance crew of the deep, the ones who keep everything else possible, but their oddities make them fascinating in their own right. The giant amphipods look like pale, oversized insects, their bodies stretched out, their movements slow but deliberate. Shrimps with glowing spots seem to carry stars on their sides. Yeti crabs wave their hairy arms like underwater gardeners tending invisible fields. Each one looks strange enough to belong to another planet, yet they're all here, in our own ocean, waiting quietly in the dark. Studying them is no easier than studying the larger giants. Nets damage them, submersibles glimpse them only briefly, and pressure changes destroy their delicate bodies at the surface. Preserved specimens rarely do justice to their size or colour. Only in the deep, under the correct pressure and cold, do they reveal their full appearance. This makes every video clip, every photograph, a treasure. They remind us of what we miss by living only on land. Their size also raises questions. Why does the deep produce so many giants? Some theories suggest that cold slows metabolism, allowing animals to grow larger over longer lives. Others argue that pressure favours bulkier forms. Still others point to the scarcity of food. Bigger bodies store more energy and allow longer fasting. The truth is, probably a mix of all these factors. What matters is that the pattern holds. From amphipods to isopods, from squid to sharks, the deep magnifies. Encounters with giant amphipods are unsettling to those who expect small, harmless scavengers. Imagine lifting a trap from the trench and finding a wriggling, translucent creature longer than your forearm, its legs kicking in the cold water. It is harmless, yet alien. And yet, its biology is no different in essence from the tiny amphipods that nibble on leaf litter in streams. The difference is scale, and scale changes perception. What seems ordinary at one size becomes monstrous at another. Among the crustaceans, there are also armoured giants that climb beyond mere scavenging. King crabs, though not true crabs, can grow massive in deep waters, their spiny shells forming near impenetrable defences. Some weigh more than 20 pounds, their claws powerful enough to crush shells with ease. They march across the seafloor in groups, armies of armoured giants searching for food. Watching them is like watching battalions of living tanks move slowly across the mud, unstoppable by anything smaller. Yet for all their size and strength, the strategy of deep-sea crustaceans remains the same. Patience, toughness, endurance. They are not the swift predators of the shallows, but they endure in places where few others can. They make a living out of what falls, what drifts, what seeps. They thrive on scarcity, turning it into survival. If the whales are thunder in the abyss, if the squid are phantoms with arms, then these crustaceans are the workhorses. Less dramatic, less mythic, but just as vital. They remind us that the giants of the deep are not always the ones that inspire fear or awe. Sometimes they are the ones that simply keep going, quietly maintaining the cycle of life in a world where waste is as important as birth. And as we leave their scuttling shapes behind, drifting onward, the stories of giants take on a new form. Not just the real, but the imagined. For as long as humans have gazed at the sea, we have told tales of monsters, leviathans, serpents, and krakens rising from the depths. Many of those myths were born from glimpses of real creatures, magnified by fear and distance. Ahead lies that realm of imagination, where the boundary between fact and story blurs, and the giants of legend swim alongside the giants of flesh. For as long as humans have looked out over the ocean, we've seen more than just water. We've seen possibilities, fears, shapes that may or may not have been real. When a vast shadow passed beneath a ship, when something strange washed up on the shore, when a storm tossed a vessel so violently it seemed unnatural, people told stories, and those stories gave rise to monsters. Leviathans, krakens, sea serpents, and other names too ancient to trace have filled our imaginations, each one born from encounters with the unknown. The deep has always been fertile ground for myth, because it hides almost everything we wish to see clearly. The Leviathan is one of the oldest sea monsters in our traditions. Mentioned in ancient texts as a beast of chaos, it was imagined as a dragon, a serpent, or a whale larger than any known. To the people who described it, it represented the untamable power of the ocean itself, something that could not be controlled or defeated. In some traditions, the Leviathan was an enemy of gods, in others, a symbol of creation's darker forces. Whether literal or metaphorical, it gave form to the deep's unpredictability, and while no real creature matches its description exactly, whales, especially sperm whales, probably inspired it. Early encounters with these massive animals would have seemed like confrontations with monsters. The kraken, another legendary giant, comes from the northern seas, particularly from Scandinavian folklore. Sailors told of an enormous cephalopod capable of dragging entire ships beneath the waves. Tentacles larger than masts, eyes the size of rooms, a body vast enough to mistake for an island. It was everything a mariner feared condensed into one nightmare. But at the heart of the Kraken legend lies truth. Giant squid, and perhaps even colossal squid, live in those same waters. Though they do not attack ships, their size and tentacles easily inspired tales of monstrous encounters. Imagine being a sailor centuries ago, glimpsing a long arm breaking the surface, or hauling up a damaged whale with sucker scars on its skin. Without modern science, the explanation would have seemed obvious. A monster lurked below. Sea serpents are among the most widespread myths. Cultures from Europe to Asia to the Americas all describe enormous snake-like creatures writhing through the waves. They're often described as impossibly long, sometimes stretching for hundreds of feet, their bodies coiling like ropes. Many of these tales likely came from oarfish, which we've already met. When one of these slender silver creatures surfaced, especially if it was dying or disoriented, it could rise vertically in the water, its red crest streaming, giving the impression of a serpent. Add stormy seas and a frightened crew, and the story would grow easily into myth. Even today, when oarfish wash up on beaches, headlines still call them sea serpents, as if the old legend never truly went away. Not all deep-sea monsters were imagined as giant animals. Some were envisioned as hybrid beings, part fish, part human, part something else. Mermaids and sirens may not fit neatly into the category of monsters, but their origins are tied to the mystery of the sea. Some historians suggest that early sailors mistook manatees or dugongs for human-like forms in the waves. Others argue that mermaids were symbolic, a way to represent the allure and danger of the ocean itself. But the idea that the deep could hold half-human, half-fish beings speaks to the same impulse, to populate the unknown with shapes we recognize, twisted into forms we don't. Stories of monsters were not always just entertainment. They served as warnings. A tale of a kraken could remind sailors of the dangers of venturing too far. A legend of a leviathan could symbolize the risks of arrogance against nature. Monsters filled in the blanks where knowledge was absent, providing explanations for the unexplained. If a ship vanished without a trace, perhaps a beast had dragged it down. If strange noises echoed through a wooden hull at night, perhaps something vast brushed against it in the dark. These explanations comforted in a strange way. They made chaos into something that could be named. But myths and monsters did not arise in a vacuum. They were shaped by real encounters with real animals. Whales breaching in the distance, squids glimpsed at the surface, sharks circling silently below, carcasses washed ashore, bloated and decomposed, unrecognizable to those who found them. The globsters of the past, unidentified masses of decaying flesh, were often interpreted as sea monsters. Only later did science reveal them to be the remains of whales or sharks. But in their strange, half-rotted forms, they were monsters enough to keep the stories alive. Even today, myths persist. Reports of giant, unidentified animals surface from time to time. Fishermen speak of shadows too large to identify, of movements that suggest something beyond known species. Some of these accounts may be exaggerations, others mistakes, but some remind us that the ocean still hides much we have not seen. With more than 80% of the deep unexplored, it is entirely possible that creatures larger or stranger than we expect still swim below. The line between myth and reality has not closed completely. The fascination with sea monsters also reveals something about us. We seem to need them. They embody mystery, fear, awe, and respect. They remind us of our limits. On land, we have mapped mountains, tamed rivers, built cities. At sea, especially in the deep, we remain small. Monsters restore balance, reminding us that there are places where we are not in charge, where we are vulnerable. Whether real or imagined, they hold power over us because they represent what we cannot control. And in some ways, the monsters of myth have helped science. Tales of krakens pushed naturalists to consider the possibility of giant squid, leading to eventual confirmation. Legends of sea serpents encouraged exploration and study of oarfish. Even today, reports of unidentified animals keep interest alive in the deep. Myths may not be accurate, but they often point toward truths we haven't fully uncovered. What matters most is that the deep has always inspired stories. Every culture with access to the ocean has created its own versions of monsters, shaped by the creatures they glimpsed and the dangers they faced. These stories span thousands of years, across continents and languages, yet they share common themes: size beyond comprehension, power beyond control, and mystery beyond explanation. That universality suggests that the deep itself is the monster, the unknown that waits just out of sight, swallowing ships, hiding secrets, demanding respect. As our knowledge grows, some myths dissolve. We now know that giant squid exist, but they are not ship-dragging demons. We know oarfish exist, but they are not endless serpents. And yet, the awe remains. Seeing them alive, real, and stranger than myth only deepens the sense of wonder. Reality does not kill the monster. It simply replaces fear with fascination. And so we keep telling stories. We imagine Leviathan still lurking, Kraken still waiting, serpents still twisting in the waves. They may not exist as we once thought, but they exist in our culture, our imagination, our art. They remind us that the deep is not just a place of biology, it is also a place of myth, a mirror for our fears and hopes. The monsters born of the deep may not live in flesh, but they live in us. Leaving behind the realm of myth, the journey shifts back toward the real, to creatures shaped not by stories but by machinery. For as much as we imagine monsters, we also build our own. The machines we send into the abyss, submersibles, robots, harvesters, are giants in their own right, intruding into a world that never knew us. Ahead, the story of giants takes a new turn, as humanity itself becomes part of the deep, sending metal behemoths into places once reserved for legends. For most of history, the deep was untouchable. Sailors saw only the surface, and even scientists could only guess at what lay below. Nets brought up fragments, broken specimens, half-rotted carcasses that gave more questions than answers. But the ocean beyond a few hundred feet remained inaccessible. The pressure crushed anything we tried to send down. The cold, the dark, the distance. All of it kept us away. To truly meet the giants of the deep, to see them alive in their own world, we needed to build giants of our own. Machines that could survive where we could not. Machines that could hunt in darkness without fear of crushing or drowning. The first attempts were crude. In the 1930s, naturalist William Beebe and engineer Otis Barton built the bathysphere, a steel ball lowered by cable into the deep waters off Bermuda. It had thick walls, small windows, and barely enough room for 2 people. They could not steer it or move it. It simply hung on its line, lowered slowly into the dark. Yet what they saw through those tiny windows was astonishing. Fish that glowed like stars, jellyfish that drifted like alien ships, shadows larger than anything they had imagined. For the first time, humans had glimpsed the deep alive. The bathysphere was not a predator of giants, but it was the first machine to follow them into their world. In the decades that followed, machines grew more advanced. Submarines capable of diving thousands of feet opened the deep further. The Trieste in 1960 became the first vessel to reach the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Its crew, Jacques Picard and Don Walsh, descended nearly 7 miles into the earth, inside a pressure sphere carried by a massive float. When they reached the seafloor, they saw life, tiny fish, shrimp-like creatures thriving even there. It was proof that the abyss was not empty, that even at the greatest depths life endured. Modern machines have taken the hunt further still. Remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, now roam the deep freely. Tethered to ships by long cables, they carry cameras, lights, and robotic arms. They can hover above vent fields, explore canyons, and capture images of animals never seen before. Submersibles like Alvin, operated by humans, dive to depths of over 14,000 feet, carrying scientists to study ecosystems firsthand. These machines are our eyes and hands in the dark, extending our reach far beyond what our bodies allow. The encounters they've made possible have transformed myth into reality. It was submersibles that first filmed giant squid alive, drifting with arms outstretched in the midnight zone. It was ROVs that revealed vampire squid cloaking themselves in their webbing, that recorded barrel-eye fish with their glowing emerald eyes. Without machines, these giants would remain legends and half-rotted carcasses. With machines, they become living beings, captured in their own element. The machines themselves are giants too, in a way. Rovs can be the size of cars, bristling with thrusters, cameras and lights. Manned submersibles are thick-walled spheres with life support systems packed tightly inside, like mechanical hearts keeping their human passengers alive. Even larger are the research ships that launch them, floating platforms that carry entire labs and crews. To send a machine into the deep is never simple. It requires teams of people, miles of cable, and millions of dollars. Every dive is a project of immense scale, a demonstration of how much effort it takes to reach the ocean's true rulers. But machines are not only for study. Increasingly, they are used to exploit. Deep-sea mining companies design robotic harvesters, massive crawlers that scrape minerals from the seafloor. These machines are not subtle hunters of life, but extractors of resources: nickel, cobalt, rare earths. They're giants of metal that threaten to destroy the habitats of the living giants we've been following. Tubeworm colonies, coral fields, sponge reefs, all vulnerable to machines that plough through them. The deep, which has remained untouched for millions of years, now faces intrusion not from monsters of myth, but from machines of our own making. Even fishing fleets use machines to hunt giants. Deep-sea trawlers drag nets across the bottom, catching orange roughy, grenadiers, and other fish that live for centuries. The nets destroy corals and sponges in their path, erasing habitats in minutes that took thousands of years to grow. Here, the machine is simple, just a weighted net, but its effect is immense. The giants of the deep are not hunted by spears or harpoons anymore. They are hunted by machines that catch them in silence, far below where anyone can see. And yet, machines also preserve. Without them, we would not know the deep as we do. We would not know the shape of oarfish, the glow of siphonophores, the forests of tube worms. Every discovery has come from a camera lowered into the dark, every revelation from a robot drifting through the abyss. They are both our greatest threat and our only connection. For scientists who descend in submersibles, the experience is transformative. To sit inside a small sphere surrounded by crushing pressure, lights cutting into the black, and then to see a whale fall on the seafloor, or a jellyfish glowing in colours never seen on land, that is to glimpse another planet. They describe it as humbling, as if the machines are not just tools but doorways. Without them, the ocean remains myth. With them, it becomes reality. The giants we build are not perfect. They still fail. ROVs lose power, tethers snap, submersibles must surface after only hours. But with each advance, we push further. Autonomous vehicles now dive without cables, mapping vast stretches of seafloor on their own. Drones roam trenches, capturing data and returning later with answers. As technology improves, our giants grow more capable and the abyss grows smaller. And yet, the deep still resists. Pressure, darkness, distance. These barriers remain. Even the best machines cannot fully master them. What we glimpse are fragments, hours of footage from a realm that stretches endlessly. The giants of the deep still keep their secrets, even as our machines hunt them. The balance remains in their favour. It is easy to imagine a future where our machines are everywhere in the deep, crawling across every ridge, mining every field, recording every creature. But it is also easy to imagine the cost. The deep is fragile. It grows slowly. It recovers over centuries. A machine can erase it in minutes. We face a choice. Use our giants to learn or use them to consume. The difference will decide what survives. As we leave behind the machines, their lights fading into the black, the thought lingers. For all our technology, we are still outsiders. The true giants of the deep live without steel, without engines, without lights. They endure in ways we can only study but never match. And some of them remain hidden still, never filmed, never caught, never proven. Ahead lies the mystery of the giants we may never see, the ones that haunt our imagination and remind us that the deep is always larger than our reach. For all the creatures we've named, filmed and studied, the truth is that most of the deep remains unseen. More than 4/5 of the ocean is still unexplored, its trenches and plains unmapped, its canyons unvisited. Even with our most advanced machines, we have only skimmed the edges. Every dive reveals new species, many of them strange enough to challenge everything we thought we knew. And that raises a question we can't ignore. What giants remain out there, drifting in the dark that we may never see? Evidence for unseen giants appears in fragments. Sperm whales return from dives with scars too large to have come from known squid. Fishermen report lines cut by something massive in the deep. Sonar occasionally registers shadows larger than whales, moving in ways that defy easy explanation. And sometimes carcasses wash ashore in unrecognizable forms. Long strands of decayed muscle, shapeless masses of tissue that fuel speculation of monsters. Most of these globsters are later identified as whale remains, but the uncertainty always leaves space for imagination. If the deep has already given us colossal squid, barrel-eye fish, siphonophores longer than whales and sharks that live for centuries, why couldn't it also hide creatures even larger, stranger, or older than we expect? The difficulty lies in scale. The ocean is vast beyond comprehension. A single trench can be hundreds of miles long, deeper than Mount Everest is tall. A single submersible dive covers only a small patch for only a few hours. Animals that migrate or live at depths we rarely visit can easily avoid us. The chance of encountering the largest individuals of any species is slim. Even with technology, our eyes on the deep are fleeting sparks, while life down there continues endlessly, unseen. History gives us reason to stay humble. Not long ago, the giant squid was only a legend. Stories of monstrous tentacles and ship-dragging beasts were dismissed as fantasy. Only in the last 2 decades did we finally record them alive. The same is true of many other deep-sea animals: vampire squid, oarfish, barrel-eye fish. Each was unknown or misunderstood until technology caught up. If these giants hid for so long, there is no reason to believe they are the last surprises. Some scientists speculate about unknown cephalopods even larger than the colossal squid. The beaks found in whales sometimes suggest specimens bigger than any ever recorded. Perhaps they represent extreme individuals, or perhaps entire species we have yet to find. The possibility of squid weighing over a ton, with arms longer than buses, is not beyond imagination. The ocean is large enough and our sampling too limited to rule it out. Other possibilities lie with fish. The coelacanth, thought extinct for 65 million years, was rediscovered alive in 1938 off the coast of South Africa. If a living fossil can hide for that long, what else might? Gigantic relatives of known fish, or entirely unknown lineages, could drift in trenches we rarely explore. Even sharks may hold secrets. We know of Greenland sharks that live for centuries, but how large can they truly grow? Reports of massive dark shapes in northern waters persist, sometimes dismissed, sometimes investigated. Without clear evidence, they remain stories, but stories often precede discovery. Some giants may not even move. Vast sponge reefs went unnoticed until recently, surviving quietly for millennia. Larger, older structures may exist in remote parts of the seafloor, biological formations so immense we mistake them for geology. Colonies of siphonophores or jellies may drift in chains hundreds of feet long, fragile enough to escape our nets, too delicate to survive capture. Their presence would leave almost no trace, yet they could be among the largest organisms on Earth. Then there are the truly speculative ideas. Could there be creatures in the trenches that grow far beyond what we think possible? The pressure is immense, but life has already proven it can adapt. Amphipods grow to a foot, isopods to the size of puppies. Exaggerate that trend, and who knows what could emerge? We have no evidence of fish or squid the size of skyscrapers, but the deep has a way of humbling certainty. The line between possible and impossible is blurred by how little we know. Even if such giants exist, we may never see them. The ocean is not designed for us. Darkness, pressure, and distance make it a fortress. Our machines reach only in short bursts, with limited light and time. A truly massive creature could remain hidden simply by avoiding the few spots we visit. If it lives deep in trenches, migrates rarely, or dies in places where carcasses never rise, it could pass through history unnoticed. For us, the unknown giants are as much about imagination as about biology. They remind us that mystery still exists in a world we've mapped from satellites and catalogued with databases. The idea that somewhere in the dark, unseen forms stretch larger than whales, or stranger than any myth, is part of why we keep exploring. It fuels curiosity, funding, and fascination. Even if we never prove them, the possibility keeps the deep alive in our minds. And in some ways, the giants we may never see are already real, not in flesh, but in effect. They live in our stories, our speculation, our caution. They influence how we approach the ocean, reminding us to expect surprises, to respect the unknown. They are symbols of humility, warnings that no matter how far we push, the deep will always keep secrets. To imagine them is to extend the story of life. Perhaps there are cephalopods heavier than anything we know, sharks that grow longer than buses, siphonophores stretched for miles. Perhaps there are entirely new forms, neither fish nor squid, that have evolved in silence, their adaptations hidden from us. The ocean is old enough, vast enough, and secretive enough to hold them. Whether we see them or not, they shape how we think about the sea. As we drift away from this realm of speculation, one truth remains. The giants of the deep, real or imagined, remind us that mystery endures. We may one day capture clearer footage, or perhaps we will never see more than shadows. Either way, they are part of the story. And from here, the journey circles back to us. For the final giant to consider is not a squid or a whale or a jelly, but humanity itself. Our presence, our machines, our stories, our power to shape or to destroy. We are part of the deep now, and how we act will decide what giants survive in the centuries to come. We've wandered through shadows and silence, from the thunder of whales to the patience of sharks, from the drifting ribbons of oarfish to the glowing webs of siphonophores, from tubeworm forests to sponge cities, and finally into the realm of myth and speculation. Each giant has carried a piece of the deep story, showing us how life stretches, bends, and invents itself under conditions that defy comprehension. But now, as the lights of our journey fade, one last giant remains to face. It isn't a squid or a fish or even a jelly. It's us. Humanity is the final presence in the abyss, the keeper, intruder, and storyteller of the deep. For most of our history, the ocean was untouchable. We fished its surface, sailed across it, told tales of what might live below, but the true deep remained out of reach. Only in the last century have we begun to touch it, to send machines down, to capture images of creatures alive in their darkness. And in that brief time, we've discovered more wonder than myth ever promised. But with that discovery comes responsibility. We are no longer just storytellers, we are keepers. What we choose to do will shape whether the giants we've met survive or vanish. The ocean is vast, but it is not infinite. Deep-sea fish like the orange ruffy live for centuries, growing slowly, reproducing rarely. Yet fleets have trawled them in decades, reducing populations to fractions of what they were. Deep corals and sponges grow for millennia, but one drag of a net can wipe them out forever. Tubeworm colonies thrive at vents, but mining machines threaten to tear through them in search of minerals. The abyss feels eternal, but it is fragile. Every slow-growing giant depends on time, and time is what our machines can take away instantly. At the same time, we are the only species with the power to protect them. No whale, no squid, no jelly can decide its fate. But we can. The same machines that mine can also study. The same vessels that exploit can also explore. Submersibles, cameras, satellites, all can reveal the deep secrets without destroying them. Knowledge is our greatest tool and respect must follow it. To see a barrel-eye fish alive, its emerald eyes glowing within a glass dome, is to realize how easily we could have lost such a marvel without ever knowing it existed. To watch a siphonophore stretch longer than a whale is to realize how much mystery still waits. The decision is whether those mysteries endure. The giants of the deep are more than curiosities. They're part of Earth's balance. Lanternfish migrations move more biomass each night than any other movement of animals. Sharks regulate food chains across vast regions. Jellies recycle energy when everything else collapses. Remove them and the balance falters. Protect them and the ocean continues to function as it has for millions of years. The abyss may feel distant, but its rhythms reach us. Climate, currents, even the air we breathe are linked to its stability. And beyond function, there is meaning. To know that a Greenland shark swims through the Arctic that may have been alive before Newton wrote his laws is to know that time itself has other scales. To know that a coral reef has been growing silently since before civilizations rose is to know that patience can outlast empires. To know that jellies can grow larger than rooms without bones or brains is to know that fragility can be power. These are not just animals, they are lessons. Each one tells us something about endurance, adaptation and possibility. We are the ones who carry their stories. Without us, they are unseen. Without them, we are diminished. The relationship is not equal, but it is intertwined. When we send a machine into the deep, it does not just capture footage. It extends our imagination. It connects our myths of krakens and leviathans to the reality of squid and oarfish. It bridges the stories we told in fear with the truths we now tell in wonder. Humanity's role as keeper of the abyss is not just about protection. It is about storytelling, about ensuring that future generations still have mysteries to imagine, giants to discover, and lessons to learn. The question, then, is not whether giants still rule the deep. They do. The whales still dive, the squid still drift, the sharks still wait. The question is whether we will allow them to keep ruling, or whether our machines will replace them. The abyss does not need us, but we need it. Without its giants, the world above would lose its balance, its mystery, its reminders of humility. To be keepers of the abyss is to recognize that role, to act not as conquerors, but as caretakers. And so, as we surface from this journey, leaving behind the forests of tubes, the ribbons of fish, the webs of jellies, and the thunder of whales, we carry with us a responsibility to protect what we've seen, to respect what we haven't, to remember that mystery itself is worth preserving. The giants of the deep will likely outlast us, as they have outlasted countless ages before. But while we are here, while we tell stories, while we build machines and send them into the dark, we decide what kind of giants we want to be. Will we be the destroyers or the keepers? That is the closing question, the one that matters more than any myth or discovery. Because in the end, the deep sea is not just their home, it is part of ours, and whether its giants endure depends on the choices we make now.